everyone, and welcome to the 26th episode of Slime Time Sidequest, an official Dragon's Den podcast. This is one of your hosts, Plattym3.
Haha, you talked first.
What do you mean? I always talk first.
Yeah, but this is our countdown show. You're now officially in the number 3 position.
What?
We're doing the top 3 countdowns tonight. So, coming in as our number 3 co-host here on Slime Time Sidequest in 2021, it's Plattym3.
Thank you. Wait a minute, but
what?
Yangus, is it just me, or does this intro kind of seem familiar?
Is it? Yeah, maybe you're just imagining things.
No. These opening lines, they seem awfully similar to something we've done before.
So it's like deja vu.
No, not like that. It's like this sensation or feeling like, I don't know, you've been repeating an action or something.
Yeah, it's called deja vu, Platty.
Bless you, Angus. Your allergies acting up? This is not usually the time of year, I think, for those.
Platty, look, it's... You know what? Never mind. Let's just say that things did seem familiar, because tonight we'll be talking about our favorite games we played for the first time in 2021.
Oh, yeah! We did an episode like this before. This is like total deja vu.
Oh, my God. I just said that.
See, Angus, I told you that's what it meant.
No, you didn't. I kept saying
that we'll be talking about our favorite games of 2021? Yes, you sure did say that.
Yes. Yes, I did.
And what better way to end the year with another set of these episodes? Tonight will be part 1 of our 2021 favorites. Kind of like last year, this episode will cover games that we played for the first time in 2021. These are definitely not all 2021 releases. They might be, but a lot of them that we'll be talking about are games that have been released in the past that we finally got around to playing.
Mm-hmm. So, joining us tonight, we have a real cast of characters to tell us of their favorite games that they played this year, whether they were released in 2021 or not. Please welcome Bururian.
What's going on?
BlueStar.
Hello.
Jay.
Hello.
And MattCraft.
Hello.
Righty.
And we'll have to wait for the BBJ a little bit later. We're gonna start with MattCraft, kind of go through MattCraft straight through tonight. Our man has got himself a new job. He's in the middle of switching that up, so he's not going to be able to be a late nighter with the rest of us tonight. So we'll get through him and his 3 games that he wanted to talk about, and then we'll kind of cycle through the rest of us as we have some good discussion. So, MattCraft, take it away. What was your, in third place, coming in third place, MattCraft's third favorite game you played this year?
Well, in third place is something I recently started playing. It is called Ragnarok Origins. It is a ground-up remake / remaster of the 2003-ish MMORPG called Ragnarok Online. Borrowing slightly from Norse mythology, it also has a long-spanning accompanying manga series, as well as a full anime, which is, I think, on Crunchyroll. There is a lot of side games in the Ragnarok franchise, ranging from Ragnarok Online Ace for the Vita, Platty, to a million different clicker games on mobile devices. Ragnarok Origin is on mobile, but plays well off of emulators and whatnot, like the original title. It's click-based, has PvP, guilds, guild PvP, and it's one of those old-school pixel games that I know and love forever.
Nice. So, I mean, I've heard of Ragnarok Online. It's always around. I've never really played it online MMORPG other than my little 10-day dalliance with Dragon Quest X. But so this is basically that game, but more modern?
Pretty much. Sadly, it does go the way of the mobile and has in-game items that you buy and all that junk, except so far I haven't had that much of a problem with it.
In-game purchases?
Yep, like every other game almost in existence, you can buy coins or whatever it's called, and you get the point from there.
Boo! In-game purchases, boo!
No play to win.
Did you say boo or boo earns?
Boo earns.
I was saying boo earns.
Dope. Alright, so, are you emulating this, or are you playing it on your phone?
I'm actually playing it on my Chromebook. but the newer Chromebooks have native Google Play support, and all I had to
Nice.
do was just open up Google Play and download it. Since it's
All
click-based in the first place, it works perfectly.
So how many days in a row have you played? Come on, you know you get that bonus.
Honestly, I have not played it any days in a row. I play it maybe an hour or two every once in a while when I have the time.
So
It's very friendly towards that, although it does have daily quests and all that junk you can do. You can just turn it on, play it for a couple hours, and bam, you're done.
so why has this been occupying some of your mobile gaming time?
Nostalgia. I played Ragnarok online for well over 10 years when I was growing up. It was
Wow.
my high school MMORPG, and I kind of played it with a group of people for a long time after that. Never liked WoW.
So what are some of the quality of life improvements over the original?
Well, it does have an auto battle system where you just kind of let it sit and do its own thing after you click on something on the screen. That's one main quality of life extra. Some of the old school players on it consider it, I'm sure you might be familiar with the term botting, using an external program to make it do what you want to do. There's also, they've integrated more quests and things like that, as the original title was based out of Korea, like a lot of the other MMORPGs at the time that were not American. So it has everything quest-wise from the get-go. It has quests, storylines, daily quests. Mainly the quest system is the major quality of life addition to it. Otherwise than that, it's just like the classic Ragnarok Online for me. Just with a giant thing, sometimes it pops up that says, "Hey, you're gonna buy some coins so you can get this neat-looking item?" And I can say with all confidence that I said no.
Then we don't need to boo you that much.
I spend my money on better things, like Black Friday Nintendo Switch sales.
There you go. All right. So speaking of Black Friday Nintendo Switch sales, I bet your game number 2 was not on a Black Friday Nintendo Switch sale, because this is pretty recent, and it's not on Switch at all.
Nope.
So that's another boo. Bring Bururian back on. MattCraft, what's your game number 2 that you've played this year?
Well, I'm sure all of you have seen the news from last year going up to this year about the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series, which is literally every single mainline Final Fantasy release 1 through 6 remastered in pixels, just like it says. It takes the original game and makes it prettier for mobile and or PC devices. My game 2 is specifically the remaster of Final Fantasy V. I actually only own Final Fantasy 1, 3, and 5 as the pixel remasters go. I chose 3 because 3 is a full-up remake from the Nintendo version, and 1, well, everyone knows 1. But Final Fantasy V has always been my personal favorite Final Fantasy. The class system, along with the storyline, just kind of clicked with me. It's kind of basic from the start, but dude on a chocobo wandering around everywhere, and then a meteor falls from the sky. That makes an interesting intro. Final Fantasy V has I want to say what we saw as the first US-based job system, excepting of course Tactics. I think that came out before Final Fantasy Collection on the PS1.
Well,
but the jobs
didn't Final Fantasy 1 have a job system?
Technically, but you didn't get to switch jobs whenever you wanted in the game. You were stuck being your jobs.
So,
Of course.
I guess if you wanted jobs, you just needed to wait a couple months and play Dragon Quest 3 then.
Yep.
But okay, back to Final Fantasy 5.
Anyway, the main thing that I liked about the Pixel remasters, except obviously the pixels, is that they completely redid the soundtracks for the game. Of course, it's MIDI orchestra, but they did a really good job on it. And even though it's pixels and you would expect a chiptune soundtrack, it fits it really well. I guess basic storyline of Final Fantasy V. The typical four crystals that govern the world are in peril, and you play as the archetypical warriors of light as you go around the world saving the crystals. You have Bartz, or as the original Japanese release famously and funnily named him, Butts, is a wanderer that literally wanders the world on his chocobo looking for some. There's also Lena, the princess of the country of Tycoon, who leaves the castle looking for her father, who started off the story by going to check on the wind crystal. There is Galuf, an old man who falls out of a meteor that crashes to the sky. Obviously, he has amnesia. Story point. And then the last party member that you find is Faris, a swashbuckling pirate who happens to be a girl. You basically start off, go find the wind crystal. Wind crystal shatters, and then the storyline goes from there. I don't want to spoil the rest of it because it's kind of recent, and I want people to be able to enjoy it for what it is.
It's actually funny because Final Fantasy V is the only Final Fantasy that I've actually put a little bit of time in, and I actually really disliked it, specifically for the reason that the protagonist only joined the journey because he had nothing better to do. That just annoyed me for some reason.
What better reason to join?
I don't know.
We don't need some long, arduous reason why.
Save the princess, rescue, lift the curse on your castle where you are a palace guardsman, and basically everything about Dragon Quest VIII.
Fangirl alert!
Well, if you do want to get technical, Bartz does save the princess's life at the very beginning of the game, and then joins the party.
He saves her multiple times later on, too.
I thought his name was Butt.
But thou must.
It is in the Japanese release, or who was the people that did it? Was it Aeon Genesis? The people that did the original translation, whoever did it, his name was Butts because they went with the Japanese thing, or Batsu.
Oh yeah, I heard all about
the worst.
It's Batsu, not Butts, from someone who used to be on the Den. I got a whole lecture on that one.
So basically, we've got a Super Mario Brothers / Dragon Quest VIII plotline.
Mamma mia.
Yes, that fits it
Save the
quite well.
Princess, Cursed Castle.
Yep.
Then you've also got like Slacker because nothing better to do.
Well, really, honestly, that kind of works because X-Death, who's the big bad of Final Fantasy V, he's a real big ham, just like how Bowser usually is, and he has some pretty funny lines actually.
Isn't he even a bigger ham in Dissidia?
I think so, but that's also thanks to his voice actor, who was the voice actor for M. Bison in the Street Fighter games like 4 and 5.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, he's pretty good in that role because he does a good job making X-Death just kind of ridiculous. And all I can think of though is just M. Bison wearing a big suit of armor, running around talking about crystals and things. But yeah, X-Death is, for him not being one of the most talked about villains from the series, he actually is. I personally do like him as a villain, just because he's just so maniacally evil that he's just so hell bent on taking down the world, just because he just wants to.
You know, I do want to allude on something. I spoke about this, I think, in one of the first side quests. I've always loved about Final Fantasy VI, where Kefka wins, without alluding into it further. Final Fantasy V, actually, even though it's not world-ending apocalyptic, X-Death actually wins as well, and then you get World 3.
Well, technically, it is pretty world apocalyptic because in World 3, he starts opening up the void, which starts destroying the world and the surface of it. So, technically, he is one of the villains that ends up winning, too. He just doesn't get quite as much success as Kefka does without going into spoilers.
Okay, I did not think about that.
I see people talk about like, Final Fantasy V, it wasn't as good as 6 and whatever. I remember when I played it like that. Out of the first 6, I think this was my favorite by far. I just love job systems.
Yeah, 5 is definitely one of those ones that, depending on who you ask, it's either considered like one of the best games or it's just kind of like, it's all right. But really, it kind of depends on if you are more gameplay focused or if you're more story focused with your RPGs.
And yeah, we know me. Whatever. Story and music. Yeah. Yep.
But the protagonist is a butt.
Yeah,
he is a butt. That's why his parents named him that. They're like, "Oh, this kid's gonna be a real ass when he grows up."
They were right.
Lord.
They had the gift of foresight.
Yep.
Yeah.
His dad could see the future.
Oh man. All right. Well, seeing the future, I can predict that we're going to move onward at this point to MattCraft's top game he played for the first time this year.
Wow.
Okay. The top game that I have played this year so far is Legend of Mana HD Remaster, which is a mouthful. Legend of Mana is the fourth game in the Mana or Seiken Densetsu series, and it is not like any other Mana games at all. It is very non-linear, and you start off with a mailbox after watching the world get torn apart and turned into a bunch of little artifacts. You play as a male or female artificer. I actually found out that's what they are. And you play through the game collecting artifacts as you do three separate storylines. Okay, Phil. And as you collect the artifacts, you unlock more of the story. You eventually do crafting. You make instruments that serve as the magic system. You make weapons, armor, all that jazz. You also make party members, which are Golem, and that's neat as well because that's an entirely separate crafting game which involves logic blocks and complicated stuff that makes my head hurt. You also have a full monster catching system that was some would make you think of Dragon Quest a little bit because the way you catch them, you go throughout them and give them food and they come and join you, and it's so adorable. The main thing I love about Legend of Mana is beyond the battle system, which I'd have to say Yangus would be familiar with this thanks to his playing the Saga series, but it's similar to the Spark system where you generate different skills that you use in battle as well as weapon techniques as you play with a very large variety of weaponry. But Legend of Mana is, for better lack of words, gorgeous. It is one of the most detailed games that I have ever played. Every single map is meticulously drawn, and the HD remake just takes that a complete step further. I have never seen a more beautiful game in my life, and I gotta say, it beats the hell out of these fancy PS5 and Xbox One games that say they're pretty. Legend of Mana HD Remaster also adds a Pocket Station game called, I forgot the name of it, but it's a little board game that you get items from the regular game playing it, mostly materials for crafting, and you can play that anytime during the main game. Otherwise than that, you guys got any questions about Legend of Mana in particular?
How is the golem crafting? That's something that absolutely caught my attention. I'm like, I want to make golems.
Well, when you unlock the golems, you take a piece of weapon or armor and make the basic building block of it, which compromises the material of the golem. Then you take other weapons, armor, instruments, things of that item, and you put them all together and you make logic blocks. Logic blocks have skills, stat parameters. You can give your golem a laser cannon or rocket launcher. If you've ever played Seiken Densetsu 3 and you get to the part where you fight the Tin Man looking thing on the bridge about maybe at the start of the story, those are the golems that you end up making. And they, I have to say, are the best party member in a game that I've ever seen.
That sounds wonderful. I'm going to pick this game up now. Thank you.
It's on the Switch and modern consoles. Not that Switch isn't modern.
What are they up to? 8th generation consoles? Is that what they call those now?
Something
Probably.
like that.
Yeah.
I gotta say that it would probably look even prettier. I hate to say it, on a PS5 with a decent TV.
Are you saying the Switch is inferior?
Well, the Switch, in my opinion, probably could not put out the graphical capabilities of the newest systems. And in my opinion, Legend of Mana, although I have it on my Switch and it's great on it and it looks wonderful on my TV, probably will look even more wonderful in 4K.
So Genesis does what Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be PlayStation?
Hard.
Or Xbox, if you want to get on that.
Xbox.
Who buys an Xbox?
Jeez.
It's a good question. Who buys an Xbox?
Just get Game Pass. You got it on the PC instead.
Yeah,
you
pretty
go.
much.
No one even needs Xboxes anymore.
I don't know anybody who has an Xbox. I'm glad we're all in agreement about that.
I have never bought one, and I remember there was a brief window where my brother-in-law lived with us and had an Xbox, and I was like, oh, wow, I can actually try, like, what is it, Blue Dragon? And I bought it, and I played it for maybe, like, a week, maybe got 5 hours into it, and I remember him coming downstairs one day, he's like, oh, hey, my Xbox has the red ring of death. I was like, oh, come on! and I've never been in a household for the rest of my life with an Xbox in it.
No.
Even then, you're not
Sad
missing. Blue Dragon was on DS.
trombone.
I
What'd
have
you say,
an
Jay?
old X.
Blue Dragon was on DS, so you're not even missing anything there.
That was a sequel.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
sequel
that-
game.
Oh, was
Mhm.
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's tactics based. It's not an RPG. It's not a traditional RPG.
Mhm.
They just called it Blue Dragon. I played it for 2 hours. I don't know.
It's a game all about our own Blue. She was turned into a dragon. That's what it is.
I thought I was the dragon.
Well, then it's a story about you and Blue. You did the fusion dance and bada bing, bada boom.
And
And I erased all memories of it because that sounds kind of horrifying.
Yep.
Too
Well,
late.
really, when you think about when that happens in like Dragon Ball or something, I mean, that has to be weird when you're sharing the body.
Reset
with
the
another
timeline.
person. That has to be a weird feeling.
Oh boy.
Guess we'll never know.
Someone call Toriyama. Let's get an answer.
Yeah, we'll get an answer by the time we get was the PlayStation 13 with, I can't remember that scene from Sandland. I think it's Dragon Quest 13 or 14 of the
I
PS,
thought it was
whatever.
PlayStation 5, Dragon Quest
PS6.
13. You think PS6? I see that in my Twitter every now and again.
Yeah, pretty sure it's PS6. Which, you know, they're pretty on pace for that. I mean, by the time we get 12, it'll be
Yeah,
well
like-
into the PS5 lifespan.
PlayStation
Oh
did
my
a
God.
commercial. PlayStation did a commercial once where they advertised jokingly a PlayStation 9. We're getting there.
Yeah, it'll happen sooner or later.
Well,
Eventually.
more than halfway.
It's going to be the console that plays you.
Yeah. You have to spend $500 for it, and it red rings immediately.
Oh, well, that's
I can see
Xbox.
that.
Yeah, that's going to be the Xbox 256. They went back
No.
a few numbers.
So what, the PlayStation whatever will have a hard drive failure? I can't remember what the big thing was that messed everyone up with it when it first came out.
Yeah,
You got to
something like
jack in to play.
every
It's going to be like the Matrix.
at launch had that problem. Something about the heat sink? I don't know.
Yeah, then they posted instructions on how to fix it. I remember that.
Look, whenever you get the red ring of death, all you have to do is wrap your PlayStation or wrap your Xbox 360 in a towel, drop it on the floor, and it'll fix it. It's called home remedies. It really
Oh.
did work for people. That really did work.
Wait, what?
You never heard of that trick? Or with the Xbox 360? If you got the
Well,
red ring of death and it overheated, you just have to wrap it up in a towel, let it get super hot, and then you drop it on the floor. Then it will work for you again.
Okay, before we get more bad advice given to us by
No, really, it does work. I swear to God, it really does work.
I'll be checking that up on Snopes.com.
Okay,
As,
Grandpa, let's get you back to the home.
Back in my day, we used to wrap them up in towels, and we liked it that way.
And drop them on the floor. That
Drop them on the floor. We had to go uphill 15 miles just to do it.
Both ways!
Both ways. In the snow.
well, that probably would have helped a little bit because I mean it was overheating.
It just burnt. As soon as it hit the ground, it just all the snow just went. It disappeared.
Oh,
Oh,
Snow
man.
into lava.
Yep, pretty
someone
much.
sizzled my Xbox.
Like it basically just turns the landscape back into springtime or summertime for a few seconds.
All
Red Ring
right,
of Death
well,
is powerful, man.
So that's what that plant in my carpet was.
Yep, it's powerful stuff.
so Yangus has just spent the past couple minutes trying to get us to slay our old Xboxes.
Yeah, go dig up your old Xboxes from your basement or your closet or somewhere.
But we're gonna move on to we'll say goodbye to MattCraft. MattCraft, good luck at your new job and have a good evening.
You guys
stick
have a
around
good
and-
night.
Catch
Yep.
you later, dude.
Tell all the customers about the thing I told you about the Xbox.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Hey,
that
but-
reminds me.
That
They
will
check
not
it-
be
hey,
a,
by the
that
way-
will not be a long tenure at this new job.
Oh boy.
I,
By the way,
Crazy.
I know this has nothing to do with why you're here, but
It's gonna be like he's fucking crazy. Get him out of here.
oh, well, since my transition was now a minute ago, I will go back to reminding people that Yangus was trying to teach you how to slay your Xbox. But Bururian has been slaying something else this year. Bururian, what is one of your top 3 games of the year?
So this game I played back in, well, I shouldn't say I played it. I played a very early build of it at a convention probably back in 2014, 2015, and it was called the Metronomicon. And it's by this studio, this indie studio called Puba, and they eventually released the game on the PC in 2016 and on the PS4 and Xbox the following year, but I never actually got around to playing it until this year when I got it on a really deep discount. But by then they had added in a whole bunch of extra features that the original version did not have. But what it basically is it's a rhythm game that sells itself as a musical RPG. So it's
RPG, you said?
it's an RPG, but it's a rhythm game. The story revolves around 4 musical students, cadets of the Neon Shield Academy. You've got Wade, your warrior class and your main damage dealer. Gwen, your protector paladin class, whose main role is to soak damage, akin to like a paladin class from Dragon Quest. You've got Clark, who is your support class and only heals. He never deals damage. And then you've got your mage class, Violet, who her personality is all about making things explode. The main source of damage.
I love that.
Oh yeah, the main source of her is that she does all of your elemental damage for the game. You do have characters that come in later in the game as you continue through and play, but these are the 4 that you start out with. So you who are graduating from the Neon Shield Academy as newly minted rhythmic combat artists are sent out into the world to battle hordes of monsters and defeating them with your dance moves and abilities. The game itself has about 40 or 50 tracks across the game, and the songs generally fall along the lines of EDM, synthwave, and chiptune music. So if you're into that sort of thing, this game should be right up your alley. But it doesn't have an overworld of any kind, just due to the nature of the gameplay. Since it's a rhythm game, you basically get kind of a singular map for each area that you're in, and you kind of just choose the game that you want to play. But as you do, you have access to go between the field, and you can go back to the academy to do other stuff if you want to. But there's really not much more to it outside of the actual combat itself. So you've got kind of inside the academy, you've got a workshop where you can earn extra things to help you inside combat itself. An interesting feature of the game, though, is that it has kind of a leaderboard, so to speak, that you can see, your friend scores or, global scores. But the game's been out for about 4 or 5 years at this point, so the global scores are all kind of topped out, so there's no real reason to even try for them. There's this one guy in the PC version that has the #1 spot for every single song in the game on all modes. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, way to not have any aspirations of getting any of those spots then.
Yeah. But once you're sent out into the world, you'll start clearing the game area by area. When you start in, the first area, you're given a list of songs to play. I think you have like 8 or 10 songs to do. And before you select your song, you can switch in and out party members that you've unlocked. You'll earn the first one in the first area that you're in, so you can change their gears and spells as needed. You can also choose the difficulty of the song, which will, give you indicators on note complexity and how hard it is compared to other songs with like a handy dandy skull meter at the bottom. So like half a skull, it's super easy. 10 skulls, good luck. Once you've selected your song, though, you're thrown into battle. And this is where the main draw of the game is. Each character will have a board above their heads. So it's kind of like, what's the best way to describe it? If you're familiar with, what's that game? Darkest Dungeon, and you've got your party layout of just 4 characters on the screen and then your enemies off to the right. The kind of the position that all of your characters in don't really matter in any meaningful way, but that's just the layout of the screen. But like I said, they all have boards above their heads with directional inputs flowing from top to bottom. So think of it like DDR, but it kind of comes in reverse. Your character on the left will always be the character you start on. I guess that's just a design choice. And the notes will begin to fall, and this is where basically all of the mechanics of the game come into play. Each character has a specialized role, like I said before, based on the party loadout that you build in before you go into each song. So when you complete a section of notes, like, as soon as you hit a note for a character, you'll get a small section to play. And the section will be ended by a denoted glowing arrow, and the character will perform an ability based on what you put into that level 1 slot, because there's 3 levels in total. All of your characters only have a level 1 slot at the beginning, except your mage class, who has 2, just based on she's your elemental damage dealer, so she needs a little bit more. So if you wanted to perform, like, say, a second or third level spell, you would continue past the first spell that you were casting, and you would continue a second kind of section of notes, and then you'll cast the spell as soon as you stop inputting arrows as soon as they pass. And this is all to the beat of the music as it goes on. But obviously, if you cast level 2 or level 3 things, this takes more time since you need more notes to cast the spell. You can switch to any other character anytime, though, by pressing the left or right bumper on your controller, and I would highly suggest playing this with a controller. Playing it on a keyboard is not a very fun experience. Though with it being a rhythm game, usually you get kind of penalized if you miss any kind of notes, but in this game, as you're switching between characters, you're not penalized for missing arrows. Unless you don't complete a section to cast a spell, the spell will just drop. But you can miss notes that can mess up combos that help you do higher ability stuff. But as you're doing damage to the enemy, they're also damaging you, so that's why you have Clark, your starter healer class. So he'll cast all your healing spells, otherwise you'll fail the song if your health bar depletes, basically. Other characters that come in later can replace them if you want. So they have like a kind of hybrid heal attack. And the first character that you get almost immediately, her name is Sarah, and her class in the game is described as Lab Coat, but she's basically a Sage class because she has attack spells and healing spells. So after you clear the song, each song can be anywhere from 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes, depending. There's no real way to tell you how long the song is. Unfortunately, it doesn't give any kind of indicator before you start the song. But once you finished it, you'll earn experience that will level up your characters and improve their stats, making things easier for you overall since you'll take less damage, if you play that song again, and obviously help you for later songs since you'll take less damage as you miss notes or just take damage from enemies. The note complexity will never change unless you change the difficulty of the song itself, though. This just makes it harder for you to fail a song no matter what difficulty you're on. So some songs will unlock side quests that will reward you with items, abilities, or creds that help you improve the workshop in the academy. But the greatest thing about this game, I think, is, in most RPGs, they try to be this serious, high and mighty, high fantasy, or maybe this low sword and sorcery kind of thing to where either you're like this grim warrior trying to complete a task, or, you're a guard who was trying to save a princess that got turned into a horse.
I've never heard of this plot line.
No, never. The game, though, itself has a very ridiculous tone about it, as most of the monsters you encounter are kind of raved out in some fashion. Like you'll have an owlbear wearing neon glasses and waving around glow sticks as you fight, or crocodiles wearing jams and sunglasses while breakdancing. So it's got a very fun tone to it. If you're looking for something pretty lighthearted, this is a great game for that. You could beat the game on easy mode and just walk away satisfied if the harder mode doesn't do anything for you. And at any time, if you want, you can just go back out to the main menu and enter free play mode and choose from all of the songs in the game, so you never even have to really do, story mode if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. It also has multiplayer, so if you want to play with a friend, you each can control like 2 characters and just kind of have a little fun with it. But that's basically the game. It's a rhythm RPG.
I was watching some videos of it, and just watching the bosses dance as they're fighting you is pretty darn hilarious.
It's great. I love this game. I wish I had picked it up years ago, but I'm glad I'm getting around to it now.
And at least, the song I'm on, like looking at the background, it is so detailed.
Oh, the art for this game may not be for a lot of people, but they've done a really, really great job with it. I imagine, though, that they spent most of their budget on this game just acquiring music licenses for like the 50 tracks. And if you want, there's DLC for, I think, an additional 10 or 12 songs that you can add on.
So what systems is this out for?
So you can get it on the PC, you can get it on the Xbox, or you can get it on the PS4.
All right.
No Switch. Sorry.
No. So the modern consoles that are not Switch.
Basically.
All right. Well, the only rhythm-like RPGs that I've ever played are the Persona 3, 4, and 5 dancing ones. I've now run my course on all those. But someone who's run through Persona 5 this year for the first time is who we'll hear from next. So, Jay, you're up.
Hello, hey. I specifically played Persona 5 Royal, which is like the enhanced, like the Pokemon Platinum, I guess.
Yeah.
But I never actually played the original Persona 5, so I went back and looked at everything it changed, and oh my god, that sounds like so much of a worse game. Like, I remember people singing Persona's praise to heaven and back, but like, I can't imagine liking it, like the original version, without all the stuff Royal added.
So it's like Dragon Quest 11 to 11S.
No, it's way more than that.
Way more than that?
Yeah. Like, one of like the big areas in Persona 5 is like this procedurally generated map called Mementos, and you have to go. It's, for the most part, it's your main area to level up and get like miscellaneous treasures, fill side quests, stuff like that. But towards the end of the game, you have to reach the very bottom of it, and there's like maybe 35 floors or whatever. And apparently in the original version, it was just nothing. The Royal, they added like these little flowers where you could trade into a shopkeeper, stamps where you could like spend to increase how much experience monsters drop, money, items, all these like extra hidden things in this main area that's otherwise completely barren.
Oh my gosh, that sounds completely wonderful. As soon as you mentioned Mementos, the backtrack for it just started playing over and over in my head, and it's literally like the same 2 bars over and over again.
It's so like,
I know what song I'm putting in.
Oh gosh. I was literally just talking about this with my brother the other day. He was like, I'm in a phase where all I can think is that the Persona 5 soundtrack really slaps. And then he was like, yeah, I don't there's like maybe 1 or 2 tracks that aren't like super duper great, but, and then he named them and I'm like, did you forget Mementos? And he was like, oh, I blocked that one out of my memory.
Like, Mementos is easily the worst part of the game, and it was so much worse in the original version, it seems. I'm like, wow. Anyway, let's talk about good things about Persona.
Yeah, this is kind of our favorite games that we played this year.
Yes, it is my number 3 for a reason. It's a pretty by the numbers turn-based RPG. You have a party of, I believe, 8 characters that slowly join you as you go through the various dungeons. You play as Joker, fancy name, who, after being pinned for a crime that he did not commit, gets like shipped out to this other town, Yaganjaya, attends a whole new school. Everyone knows about his past and is like, oh, don't trust him. He's the bad kid. He has a knife. But when you find out that the PE teacher is sexually abusing students, you stumble into the world of cognition and find out that you can manifest your rebellion as spirits called personas to steal the treasure of people with warped desires. This just gets weirder and weirder with every second, and that will cause them to have a change of heart and confess to the things they've done.
And then their hearts grew 3 sizes that day.
And their hearts grew 3 sizes that day, unless you screw up and they die. Oops.
Yeah, when you like actually say it out like that, the whole premise is a little
when
screwy
you say
there.
It out loud, it's completely ridiculous.
What game related to Shin Megami Tensei doesn't have a weird premise to it? Come on now.
All right, the power of friendship will conquer all.
All these fucking games have weird premises. How is Persona 5 any different?
It's all in the intonation in Jay's voice.
Yes, and speaking of the power of friendship conquering all, in between exploring dungeons, you can also spend time with your party members, increase their friendship, get to know a little bit more about them. And as you do, they will offer you like particular bonuses. Like, let's say the one character Ryuji, once you build your friendship with him, if he's in your party, he can like cure stas effects, take what would be a fatal hit for somebody. Certain combinations of characters in the Royal version can access special showtime attacks, which would be like a desperation move. And I bring up Ryuji because he in particular has this absolutely broken ability where if you run into an enemy from behind and your level is higher than theirs, you just instantly kill them.
Whoa.
You get experience. Like, you won the battle, but you don't battle.
Whoa.
It is broken.
Yeah. Jeez.
It is.
I actually had someone tell me very recently, like 2 days ago, that I needed to play Persona 5 Royal because I've only played the original version, but I still have like 2 trophies to get on the original version, but I don't really want to play New Game Plus and blah blah blah.
Who decided it's a 100-hour game? Like, I don't really like playing New Game Plus that much as is, but I am absolutely not going to do it for a 100-hour game.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
underestimate my power, but it overestimates the amount of free time I have. So there's that.
Yeah. As Joker levels up, you get access to stronger personas. These are basically equipment. They alter Joker's stats, elemental resistances, and all that such. Every other character has a set persona that can like become stronger as you deepen your bond with them, but Joker has the ability to switch his at will. And normally they're very balanced, but if you play the Royal version, you get all the DLC from the old version, and DLC persona can be summoned for free the first time, and there are some of them that absolutely bend the game in half at the end of the game. So you can only imagine what they do at the beginning.
My favorite thing to do was to get a persona that nulled physical damage, just because, you know, a lot of things use physical damage, and a lot of times then they'll just try to punch you and you'll be like, ha!
It reminds me of when I was playing Shin Megami 4, I had a unit who drained physical damage, and I'm still trying to figure out how that works.
He gets off on being punched, maybe? I don't know.
There we go. There's the explanation.
Anyway, Persona has very good music, except for the time when it doesn't. Also, here's my main problem with Persona. It goes on for like 40 hours longer than it has to. There's a bad ending, and I like it better than the real ending. It's like,
We'll circle back around to that kind of topic when we get to my
like without
game.
spoiling, basically the bad guy gets away, Joker gets killed, and the mystery goes unsolved. But like we the player know the mystery from like the word go, because you get like those side scenes and such, and it's like we know who the killer is, we know what their motive is. Him killing Joker is totally acceptable, and it's like by the time I got past that bad ending, because I saw it on my first playthrough, I'm like, wow, I like this bad. I stopped having fun at the last major dungeon. And I'm like, boy, I really just want this game to end. And then I found out that there's a whole post game in Royal that you need to max out your friendship with one particular character to get, and I did not get it.
The whole point of Royal.
I'm like, good, I do not want to play this game anymore. Thank you, I'm done.
I've heard that the post game in Royal is like better than the whole rest of the game.
I've heard
But I
that.
have not played Royal, so like.
In order for me to find it, you would have to max out your friendship with a particular character who leaves like halfway through this one dungeon, and there's like a whole other 20 hours of gameplay after that. And if you haven't maxed them out, you're just SOL. And the only way for me to access the whole post game would be to start New Game Plus on a 100-hour RPG.
You also get a specific persona for doing New Game Plus. I think it's I don't remember any of these names, but it's like the default persona for Joker gets a he gets a big buff
that's fine
in New Game Plus.
My favorite persona was from DLC, so I'm like, all right, cool, thanks.
I always felt it was weird that like you have this persona that was handcrafted for your character, and then you just ditch him in the first like 30 seconds of the game. Bye, guy.
Worst persona.
He looks cool though.
I think they had, because I had like an extra a powered up version of him later on, but I forget if he was DLC or what, because I definitely didn't do New Game Plus. I think that's all I have to say about Persona for now.
All right. Well, you gave me the perfect setup, because you had somebody that was escaping out of a dungeon midway through. That was one of the last characters you were talking about. And BlueStar is already groaning for the intro to her third game of the year that she's picked. What game would that be?
So it's actually 3 games for my number 3. So it's the Zero Escape Trilogy. It is a group of games that originally came Yes, Yangus, we are done with Persona. It's a group of games that came out on the Nintendo DS like a decade ago or something like that. And my family likes to play point-and-click adventures on the TV around the holidays. So this was one that my brother recommended after my dad was like, let's do something with like escape rooms. And yes, that means I technically started the first game last December. Shush. Time isn't real anyway.
Okay.
Especially
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Especially like yeah.
Time is a construct of human conception.
So yeah, the series was remade recently, and so I have the first 2 as a downloaded game on the PlayStation 4, and the third one I downloaded off of Steam. So it's a visual novel series, which means it ends up being a lot of story and very little gameplay. So Platy would hate it. My dad also got very lost in the story very soon into the second game out of the 3, so my brother and I tried really hard to keep him up to speed, but it just kept getting weirder and more complex, and eventually we gave up, and then, my dad would fall asleep on the couch while we were playing, and after that we did our best. The gameplay is pretty basic. You pick up items and look for clues to solve the puzzles in the room. And there are a lot of instances where the player has to make a decision. So it'll be like, do you take the left path or the right path? Do you go through, the right door or the left door? Do you take the red pill or the blue pill? Which is a big part of the story, because the story, the sci-fi element of it comes in because it's all based on the idea that each decision creates a branch in time where 2 possible futures form. So there's the possible future where you take the left path, and there's the possible future where you take the right path. And sort of the whole point of the game is exploring all of those possible futures to get sort of the full picture of basically everything that's going on. So you really do get to see things from all sides, and the way sort of the sci-fi comes into it, it's just kind of a cool premise if you can wrap your head around it. So it's also a lot of cool psychology studies that are sort of meshed in with everything, and classic problems like Schrodinger's cat is one of them that comes up a lot, and they're all worked into it. So it seems like it could almost be real, which makes the nerd in me very, very happy. So just sort of this fantastical stuff in sort of a real setting makes me think that, hey, maybe real life doesn't have to be so boring.
You know what else isn't boring? The first game on my list. I was kind of pausing there, seeing if you were done. I gave it enough time. I'm like, okay, I think she's done.
I was expecting someone else to chime in with something, anything, but it's okay. We don't have to talk about my game. I can just have spewed everything there.
I was gonna say, has anybody else played any of these Zero Escape games?
No, I haven't played any of them, but I do want to play the first one because I remember Nintendo Power really advertising it back. I don't remember what issues it was, but I remember them talking about that 9 doors, 9 people, the first game of that series, and it seemed interesting. I never played a visual novel, but the story idea seemed like it would be interesting to go through.
The first one's probably... See, for the best one, it's tied between the first and the second one, because obviously the second one improves on a lot of the things that the first one did, but like I said, the story gets kind of weird and complex. So the first game has a good balance of being a little bit out there, but still being fairly easy to follow. So I definitely recommend at least playing the first game, and if you hate it, then no need to go on to the second one. But if you don't, the second one is called Virtue's Last Reward, and that one is also very good. I liked the first and the second one enough to go on to the third one, which is called Zero Time Dilemma. But everybody agrees that things kind of just went off the rails in that game. It was still fun, and I still enjoyed it, but it was definitely felt like it had a lot less time put into it than the other two.
Not as polished.
Yeah.
Just not as feature heavy or whatever.
Yeah.
Fair enough. After a couple go rounds, sometimes they just get complacent and rush out something. Sometimes you got to pay the bills. Sometimes you got to be a little braver and wait a few years and get your next game out.
Can't have these companies defaulting on anything.
No. I mean, you need money. You can't default on anything.
That would
especially
be
if
really
they do
brave.
it twice.
Then you'll get no games out. Then you'll have to get bought out by another company in Japan and get bailed out from them.
Yep.
Kind of like Square.
Could happen 2
Yeah.
times even.
Could happen 2 times. You know, how brave of them to fight that battle again. So if you can't tell by all of our horrible transition skills here, we'll go into my third game of the year. And I wasn't going to talk about this one at first, but I got talking about it a couple weeks ago with somebody, and I'm like, I really did enjoy my time with it. It doesn't leave a whole lasting impression, but for like 3 or 4 weeks I put into it, I had a blast. And I was thinking I was talking to somebody about spring break, and I'm like, man, you know what I really did a lot of on spring break up in the mountains? Like every night I was putting 3 to 4 hours into Bravely Default 2. And this is a game that Yangus and I, it was half of our yearly race this year. And honestly, it's the first game in quite a few years that both of us have actually both finished in the same year that we tried and raced with. But Yangus eventually won because he rolled credits on Like a Dragon as well. And no, not Like a Dragon. I did not.
Did I not convince you enough last year with it?
Apparently
No,
not.
you did. And I've got a plan. I've actually got a plan for this because something that Blue was saying in the last segment about, Dad falling asleep on the couch, that's what happened to me with Like a Dragon. Not that it was bad or anything, but it had so much story, and I'm always playing it at like 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. And, you start a 20-minute cutscene at 10:30, and I'm gone. Next thing you know, it's 11:15, and my character's been standing around for 20 minutes like, what are you doing?
That is the con of Yakuza games, is when they have cutscenes, they have cutscenes. They're not as bad as Metal Gear, but they're not short.
No.
Nope. I think I'm going to try to play that this next coming year with streaming it to my Vita. I mean, I used to play what is it? Here's the Dragon Quest Heroes 2 on my Vita via streaming, and I did okay on that. The frame rate, my internet was good enough to keep the frame rate up on that. So we're actually redoing the bedroom right now and moving a bunch of furniture around, and pretty soon I might have the PS4 like hardwired into our internet again. And I'm like, that's something I can just turn on across the room and lay in bed and play on my Vita at night.
And then you'll definitely fall asleep during the cutscenes.
I don't know, like maybe, but sitting on the couch at night watching, I think it's like the eye strain. I don't have the best eyesight, and I really have a hard time like convincing myself to put my glasses on. So looking at the TV 10 feet away is, I think that's part of it. Like laying in bed with my Vita at night, I don't go to bed. I just keep playing. Next thing I know, it's like 1 o'clock. I'm like, oh crud, man! I gotta be up at 6 for work. And here I am in the middle of another game. But all this
Must
to
be
say,
a dad thing.
it's a dad thing. I get on that couch and nope, TV's on. I'm on the couch. I'm out. But Bravely Default 2. Back to where I was saying. The first 2 games I played back to back in 2016. I remember because it's when my youngest son was born. That was my habit, just sitting in his bedroom, and when I have to go rock him back to sleep at night and then I'm wide awake for the next hour, I'm going to put an hour into Bravely Default. And so here we are 5 years later, Bravely Default 2 comes out, and it's not related to the other ones at all. Despite its numbering system, it's not Bravely Second. It's definitely not Bravely Third. Much like a Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, same kind of stuff, but new world, new characters, whatever. You got the Brave and Default systems back in the battle system. You can get the 3 extra actions. You can kind of borrow them to get a bunch of attacks right in a row, or you can save them up, wait for a second. Taking those 3 extra actions right at the beginning of the battles, good way to deal with trash mobs. Or saving stuff up or trying to use them when you're trying to set up a combo is always good. You could boost your strength and then attack. Get some extra attacks in. There's tons of jobs, and as MattCraft was talking about Final Fantasy V, Bravely Default is kind of what, if they had stayed on that Final Fantasy V path and made Final Fantasy V 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 25 years later, here's what we would probably be at with job systems. I love having the main job. You're leveling up. I like to see numbers go up. I like to get the experience. I want to get to the next level. But, you switch jobs, you're getting your JP, your job points too, and making your job class go up and learning new abilities or spells at every single job class level. You can also have sub jobs. They don't level up, but like once you've maxed out a job or something, you stick it as your sub job. You've got the ability to use pretty much all of the skills there, except for like the one specific bonus you get from having that job as your active job. The graphics were beautiful. I love it. It's that 2D HD kind of look to it. I really liked it. I mean, it wasn't exactly like Bravely Octopath. Gosh, I'm having a hard time thinking. It is 2D HD, right, Yangus? Was Bravely Default or?
No, Bravely Default 2
1
uses,
was...
No, Bravely Default 2.
Uses,
Redo.
Okay, wait, which one are you specifically talking about here? Which one are you talking about?
The newest one.
Alright, that one is all 3D graphics, but it uses artwork / painting / drawings for the
That's right.
town environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Like
it was all like
first two games did.
towns, right?
What?
It's
Was that
all
Jay?
like pre-rendered towns, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm starting to get like Octopath mixed in my brain here, but the graphics are beautiful. I do like a lot of the effects, like you're walking through the desert, because the water effects were really cool. I remember, and even going back to the demo, like almost 2 years ago that they first put out, was really neat. One little complaint I had: the boss hit point pools were huge.
Oh my god. They were such sponges. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I get it. I can see where the gameplay loop of this boss fight is going, and I really don't want to spend the next 15 minutes on it, but I guess I am. I never really found that hard. I probably had to replay 2 of them, but like they just took forever. It was like, okay, I get it. Listen, I did 50,000 damage, and I can see where I'm going to do 50,000 like every few minutes. Why do you have 250,000 hit points?
Yeah.
It's you're not exactly stopping me from killing you. You're just prolonging this.
Yeah, there were
and
definitely some of those bosses where it's like, okay, for what your job class is, you should not have this much health. I don't care if you're a boss or not. Like some of them that were like mage characters, like the one that God, what was it? It was one of the like classes that was supposed to be like the glass cannon type character or job class. Like that character had way too much health for what point they were at in the game. It's like, seriously, this is like one of the first bosses of this chapter. I know the game gets harder the longer you go on for, but come on, man. This class should not be this durable.
But it's taking your time. That means it's hard.
Ugh. It took my time.
It makes you
My time
feel
was
good
gone.
about making the numbers go down, because that's what you ultimately want to do. Decrease their numbers to 0 while raising your numbers to max.
Mm-hmm.
Make the numbers go up. Generate
Make
the
their
happy
numbers
the happy brain chemicals.
I love the happy brain thing.
You know who activated my happy brain chemicals was Elvis, and I have a hate relationship with the name Elvis. I was born on Elvis's birthday, and it got brought up all the time as a kid. Growing up in the early '80s, people, these days, who talks about Elvis? You don't really walk around people bringing up Elvis stuff,
especially where we live.
Yeah, but like. When I was young, it was always like, oh man, that's Elvis's birthday. And one year, like my dad, as a kind of joke, bought me an entire sheet of like 100 uncut Elvis stamps. I was like, what the F am I going to do with Elvis stamps? I'm like 8 years old. Like, who the hell? What do I need stamps for? Like, really? Cut them up. Mail your envelopes.
Mail Elvis your fan letters.
He's alive out there somewhere, right?
So, I mean, just seeing that name, like, I was like, I don't want to play with a character named Elvis. Can I switch names or something? And you know what? He was not, like, and then again, I'm like, oh, it's probably going to be one of the typical womanizing type characters in a game. The way he, like, I don't know, the way he sounded with his accent was just going to be this. He had was it Scottish?
Yeah, he had a Scottish accent. Honestly, he
yeah.
reminded me of what a young Rab would have been like from Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah, but the accent was really awesome, and the character was not really like he wasn't. God, what's the frickin' guy from the first 2 Bravely Default games?
Ring a bell.
Ring a bell. Yep, I was like, oh, he's gonna be the Ring a Bell character, and he really wasn't. He was pretty cool, and his whole town had like some good stories because the whole game revolves around going to 6 towns, maybe 7.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of locations. I mean, there's like a whole continent, but mainly like just one big town there. There wasn't a whole lot of locations to visit city-wise, but they all had fun side quests. There was a little problem there with the implementation. There was like 100 side quests in the game, but there was no numbering system.
Yeah,
no numbering system.
It's
You're
really
like,
hard to keep
did I get
track
them all?
of how many job classes, or how many side quests you have going. And the thing is, too, you can only take so many because once you hit a certain number, the game will no longer properly track which ones you have and have not done.
And I mean, I liked that I could turn on markers for like where to go. It by default they're on like there's a little red marker for where the next main story thing you need to deal with, and there was like a blue one I think for side quests. And there's little bubbles above the people's head who have side quests. I mean, I love that it had so many side quests. Some of them were just not having a quest log was ridiculous. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
And it was easy to spot, easy to found too. But there were some side quests that were so ridiculously easy. It's like, why did you even bother putting this in there? There was one in the more vertically inclined town that was at one point they were throwing people down into the pits to like see if they were angels.
Yeah, that was they're trying to see because they believe fairies were taking over the town.
Fairies.
So they would just throw people in there and be like, well, if you're a fairy, then you're gonna be able to fly out. But if you don't, then that means you were one of us. It's basically like witch trials from like Salem back in the day.
Like, hey, if you splat on the ground down there, congratulations, you weren't a fairy. And oops, sorry, we killed you. But which wasn't even the more disturbing some of the stories that went on in this game.
Yeah, honestly,
like that one was pretty with the painter.
Oh my god! That whole part of the game was probably my favorite portion, just because that was like that was the part of the game that I felt was most like narrative-wise like the earlier games, especially One's case, because as much as I enjoyed parts of Bravely Default 2, I felt like there were a lot of parts where it's like, okay, this isn't really that great or interesting. But I think it was chapter 2 or 3. It was chapter 2, because that's when you go to Elvis's hometown. Like, that part of the game was like, okay, now see, this is the kind of thing that I really enjoyed about Bravely Default 1 in both a narrative and setup sort of way. Because honestly, that villain of chapter 3, or chapter 2, excuse me, she was pretty freaking crazy for one thing.
Oh, heck yeah.
And for anybody who's played Earthbound, and you've seen, what the final boss Gygus looks like, the boss of chapter 2, the mural that she ends up painting, it's created through very, very dark and questionable methods. But the way that it looks and animates, it was like, as soon as I started seeing that activate, it's like, oh wow, this is, really giving me deja vu back to that Gygus fight, because of how it animates and how it moves and how you can't really comprehend what it's exactly doing. Like that was probably one of the best parts of the game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And you said it didn't quite hit all the beats like 1 and 2 did. It really felt like a JRPG by numbers. It didn't have one of the best things about the first 2 games is when the title screen changed. Like, those were plot twists that were reflected in the title screen, and it was just so awesome. And this one was like, there was one point in the fairy killing town that I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming, but I had other people like, what? You didn't know that? I'm like, oh, sorry. My one bit of joy. But I mean, it was a good solid JRPG. Kind of like introducing somebody to like Dragon Quest 4 or something. And like, hey, here's something with all the roots of what a JRPG could be. Go town to town, do the stuff, move to the next town. Or like if you took Dragon Quest 7 and cut it in maybe a third. But it was good. But at the same time, I wrote here like, yeah, it didn't wow me as much, and maybe because all the systems were the same as Bravely Default and Bravely Second for the most part. You got the same exact battle system, and you got the same exact, you're getting a bunch of jobs, you're knocking off the asterisk holders, you're taking their asterisk, you're moving new jobs, and I mean, well, it was fun again. Imagine if like Dragon Quest 4 and Dragon Quest 5 did the same thing Dragon Quest 3 did. Have generic party members that you were going to save the world, and you could change classes and just make up your party, and you're doing that again for Dragon Quest 4, and you're doing that again for Dragon Quest 5. Like, Dragon Quest, yeah, you're doing a lot of stuff the same, but they change it up and things move around. You've got 3 and 9 where you're making up your own characters, while the other ones are preset characters. And I mean, yeah, it's all got the same roots, but there's something different. This just kind of seemed like, okay, ho-hum, you're playing Bravely Default again. Which, was fun. I gave it 50 hours. When the credits happened, I was like, I'm perfectly fine with this. It very clearly sets up how to go into the post-game. There was something a little sad at the end. And if you didn't like the sadness, you could continue on and try to get a better ending. And if that one still made you a little bit sad at the end, you could continue on and get the perfect ending at the end. And honestly, I stopped at the first one and I was like, you know what? I don't need another 20 hours of this. I've put in about 50. I got out what I wanted. It was fun. I don't want to bash on the game and get pissed about it, trying this for another 2 weeks just to beat post-game and get the true ending or whatever. So I was happy with it. Yangus, what was your final kind of verdict on it? You were kind of ho-hum by the end?
Well, it's like I've said throughout playing it too. Like, I don't know if it's just because of after playing it after finishing up Yakuza Like a Dragon, or if it's just because I was expecting it to be more like the first game in my head. I don't know. But honestly, I found myself having such a mixed opinion of the game like the whole time playing through it.
Mhm.
Because I would get to points where, like I said with like Chapter 2, where I was like, oh, this is really good. This is, when I think of a Bravely game, like, this is what I think of story-wise and characterization-wise and whatnot. But then I got to points where I just didn't feel that sort of same quality, I guess. It's weird to explain it because I don't want to get into spoilers or anything, but basically, just to sum it up for my own opinion, it just did not fit with what I was expecting, and I didn't try and play it up too much beforehand, because even when going into the game, it was like, well, okay, I guess we'll see how it is. I wasn't excited to play it, so I think that might have been part of it as well. But just overall, I just wasn't that super invested in the game. I beat it, and I tried going for the best ending, but I kind of just said fuck it to that one after a certain point, because so talking about the bosses that have too much health, without getting into spoilers, the boss of Chapter 6 is a boss that you actually have to end up fighting 3 times in a row, each time getting harder and harder, but you don't get any breaks in between. So it's kind of, it got a little unnecessarily hard at that point, I felt, even for it being endgame. Usually endgame RPGs will either give you a break in between or something, or they'll heal you mid-fight so you can be back to full strength and you can fight the final form or what have you.
Yeah, dude, modern RPGs, sure, but older RPGs would do that all the time. I remember playing plenty to where you wouldn't get breaks between forms.
Yeah, well.
Bravely Default isn't anything if it's not an old RPG.
God doesn't play nice.
Anyway, I just was not really that big of a fan of the game in the end, and honestly, for it being a game that I was really looking forward to when they first announced it, and seeing that they were going to have a lot of the same style, a lot of the, even they brought back Revo as the composer, there's just a lot of stuff that ended up with this game that I just did not end up enjoying it that much, and honestly, it's probably one of my biggest disappointments of the year. And just was really a game that I just kind of felt like I wasted my money on buying. So, yeah, really just a game that really disappointed me. And honestly, after I kind of had that same thing with 2, but with Bravely Second. But with Bravely Second, there were parts of that game that I did find myself liking after the fact of playing it and looking back.
Yeah, when you went back to it, you really had a good time.
Yeah,
stepping away for a while and coming back.
Yeah. But that was also because that game I did start realizing that, it does have, despite some really bad humor in it, that it does have a lot of the stuff that I enjoyed about the first game so much. But I just really wasn't feeling that way with Second at any point. Or God, this is why it's so confusing, because I'm Bravely Second and Bravely Default 2. But with Bravely Default 2, I never really felt too many moments like that, except for a few bits and pieces here and there. So, I mean, it has good stuff to it. The game's not awful by any means, but it's definitely a game that I just personally just was really disappointed by. And I can't really say that with a whole lot of games that I've played, that there was it genuinely disappointed me, but that was one where I just did not find myself super invested in it by the end of it, and just kind of was playing through it just to finish it and just be done with it and put it back on the shelf. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about it. It's just
all right.
Wasn't the greatest game that I've ever played. Let's put it that way. Definitely wasn't the best RPG I played this year either.
I was going to say, not the greatest game you've ever played. That describes literally every game you've ever played, except for one. But
You're getting ahead of myself.
That was Yangus. You heard him. I am Plattym3. Our next person is Bururian, and his game is I am Setsuna.
Or is he?
I am Setsuna.
Or are you?
You are, man. You own that.
You go, girl.
So, I Am Setsuna is a Square Enix title that was done by Tokyo RPG Factory. And Square made this studio specifically to make RPGs, older aesthetic RPGs. And I think the whole selling point back in 2016 when this game initially came out was, we want to make games like the old Super Nintendo games, but for modern consoles. And the result we got from that was I Am Setsuna. And this year, was kind of really wanting that. Like, a lot of the RPGs that I had been playing, I was having issues with staying interested in them for more than the first 5 or 10 hours and kind of just falling off the wagon because I don't like a lot of modern RPG tropes anymore. But as it was described by Square Enix, they were trying to go for like a pure fantasy RPG. And, all future RPGs made by this company specifically, or this development studio specifically, kind of hinged on the success of I Am Setsuna, which thankfully it did well enough that we've gotten 2 games since, Lost Sphere and Oninaki. But for this one, they kind of wanted to do something old school, something along the lines of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest. They even specifically stated that Chrono Trigger was a, huge inspiration due to its popularity. And a lot of the development team really loved Chrono Trigger. And that they also believed that there weren't a lot of kind of spiritual successors to Chrono Trigger on the market, so they kind of wanted to capitalize on that. Also, being under the Square Enix flagship and everything. So, like I said, they drew a lot of influence from Dragon Quest, from Final Fantasy, some other ones like Saga, even Mother. And they wanted to make a game that, also had the playtime of an old Super Nintendo RPG, because RPGs these days, as you've probably experienced with Bravely Default 2 or Persona 5, these can be like 100-hour RPGs for you to just get to nearly the end of the game or something like that. I remember Bravely Default took me 80 hours to get to the end of the game. So this was something, you're done in 20 to 30 hours. And unfortunately, you never know how long you actually spend in this game because it doesn't keep track of a timer in the game. So by the time I finished it, I had no idea how long I spent on it, unless I was, you're paying attention to the achievements as you earn them on the PS4, at least from the first one to the last one. But it is it's a very melancholy RPG. Its central theme is sadness. Because in the opening of the game, you as a mercenary are given this assignment by this unknown NPC to go out and kill a woman named Setsuna. And that's all the information you're given. So you trek down and you find her. And as you're about to find her, she's like, hey, are you here to kill me? And, you kind of get these dialogue options through the game that kind of give a small split throughout the game as you play in dialogue. But ultimately, the choices don't matter, so you can kind of go whichever way you want with them, which is a little bit of an unfortunate thing, but hey, that's old RPGs for you. Your choice doesn't actually matter. But, if you say, yeah, I'm here to kill you, or some snarky comment that you'll probably get, she wants you to join her team as she is going out on the last rite, because she is the chosen sacrifice for the world. The world is in turmoil. Monsters are basically keeping people in separated, populated towns, keeps the human population down. And they are going to go and sacrifice Setsuna so that the monsters will kind of recede for a number of years, although it's never really determined or specified how many years that is. So you join her party along with one other character. So you start out with 3. And as you work your way through the game, through a snowy-filled game, this game is all snow all the time. There's no other biomes in this game. There's no desert. There's no plains, meadows, anything like that. Every town is full of snow. Everybody is cold. Everybody is miserable. The OST itself is a piano soundtrack the entire time. Battle themes, intros, outros, world map music. It's all piano, and it is all fantastic. Usually something like that would get stale after a while, but whoever they had do the soundtrack for this game did a fantastic job with just a piano. But it's a very standard fare RPG. Like I've said like 5 times now, it's all about Super Nintendo aesthetics. So you go through each town. Each town has their own vignette. You'll pick up characters along the way. You'll find new revelations as you journey to make the sacrifice for Setsuna. The party doesn't want her to kill herself to sacrifice the monsters, but she has to keep the world from getting worse because, this time on the sacrifice, the monsters are worse than ever. And unless they do this, humanity may come to an end. But for me, the real, outside of the story, the real thing for me is always combat systems in these games. And the combat system for this is basically the Chrono Trigger combat system. So all of the characters have their own weapon types. You don't upgrade. You buy new weapons, but there's really not a difference in your stats between the weapons. It's all about how you upgrade them using sprite knights that you gather throughout the game, and that's where the real meat of the combat system comes into play, because everything that you apply will give you different abilities for different characters, because specific characters can only equip certain sprite knights. And as you use these sprite knights, they can evolve, adding stuff on, like bringing MP costs down, increasing certain stats, increasing your agility, your evasion, your strength, so on and so forth. And you can stack all of these up, and each sprite knight can have 10 of these effects applied at any one given time. So you can make some really killer combinations with all the stuff that you can equip. And you equip these sprite knights via your equipment slots. So, your accessory item will basically let you equip specific things, and every accessory also gives you can give you a bonus ability. But I would really say that if you haven't played this game, to give it a shot. It's a really decent game. I had feelings at the end of it. It's a very sad game.
You obviously like this a lot better than Pendy did.
Oh, did he not like it?
He was on for our Christmas in July, and we covered this game because it was snowy, so that was enough to qualify for Christmas in July.
Oh, yeah, that works.
We have very high standards at this podcast, goddammit. And let me tell you, that met our high standards.
Oh, boy, yeah.
But you can.
I didn't even finish it. I'm trying to think.
You could do double and triple checks like you could in Chrono Trigger. What's not to like about it?
Well, I didn't really.
Yeah, he doesn't like Chrono Trigger. That's not really selling the game to Platy there.
Yeah, you haven't sold it to me, but other 99.9% of JRPG fans out there that really love Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, it's got an active time battle system, but you can change it to wait. That's what I always do if I get the option, because I don't personally like active time battle.
No, neither do I. And honestly, I didn't hate Chrono Trigger. Yangus, I think this is our what we've just been talking about on the side. Games we love to hate compared to games we just love to bitch about. I played Chrono Trigger. It was all right, and
you see,
I think at the time I played it, I didn't realize it was supposed to be the best game ever. And then reading about it years later, I'm like, oh, it was the game I played between this game and this game. It was just
it's fun to give it kind of a hazing, because it'll just set people off.
Yeah,
and that's the fun thing to do, right?
Yeah, of course. So
I just mentioned Persona around Yangus, and
luckily I kept him on mute during the Persona 5 times.
You didn't keep me on mute. I kept myself mute.
Unfortunately, I asked his opinion of Bravely Default 2. Sorry about that, everybody. I'll just cut that out.
Oh, I will have to say the only thing that
I think I've had enough bad things about Persona for Yangus.
The only thing that I didn't like about this game, I guess I could say, is that it felt a little too easy. I didn't really ever have much of a problem with the combat, except for the purposeful harder enemies, because they're it's one of those things where you've got a bestiary, and every bestiary has the different types of monsters. You got your beasts, you got your birds, you got your question mark class, whatever, and in every one of those there's one specific type of that enemy that is just hard for the sake of being hard. And the game is also brutal because there's no autosave in this game, so you have to kind of save or you're screwed. And I did run into a couple of times to where I ran into these harder, because they are just meant to be hard, creatures, and you get a game over, and it just boots you back to title screen. So, and also, like, when you reach the end of the game, like, right before you go to fight the final boss, like, a portal opens up next to the save point, and you can take it back out to the world map, and just a whole ton of side quests open up there, so you can go do extra story stuff for all of the characters if you want to, but you don't even get that option until the end of the game. Also, no New Game Plus like Chrono Trigger, so you want to start a new game, you have to play from the beginning again.
All right, well, talk about hard games. Jay is going to delve into his second block of games, I guess we're going to talk about here. Definitely not an easy time.
In fact, it's such not an easy time, he can't even say anything about it.
No,
He's speechless.
completely
He's horrified.
silent. Anyway, so my set of games was the Dark Souls series, because I had the wonderful idea of marathoning through all three of them because I played the first one for the first time on the remake on Switch, and I'm like, wow, this is great. And my brother's like, hey, I have 2 and 3 if you want to play. I'm like, sure, send them my way. And I decided to marathon through all three of them, and I only very recently finished 3. They're all similar enough that I think we can like lump them all together. Basically, you're in this very cold, angry world. Everything's trying to kill you, and each game has a different goal. Usually, you're trying to relight this original bonfire, which is like a sacred rite, I guess. It's very difficult. One mistake and you will die, and every time you kill enemies, you get souls, which are basically your currency. You use them for leveling up and buying stuff and all that stuff. And when you die, you drop all the souls you were carrying. And if you can get back to that spot, you get them back. But if you can't, you can't. And some of these moments are incredibly difficult. And I honestly don't really know how to talk about Dark Souls, but I had a lot of fun with it. Especially 1, not so much 2.
Did you
Well, two is the black sheep of the series for sure.
Did you do a lot of
quite an interesting history behind it?
Did you do a lot of lore stuff with the game? Did you even try to read the lore of the items to pick up on stuff that was going on in the background of the game?
Some of it I did, yeah. Like how I learned that because after you finish this one area, the Firekeeper in the first game, you find where she was and she's dead. Like if you examine her gear, you could find out that she was murdered.
Murdered by Lautrec.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can actually like go after her murderer and get a revenge. And if you do, you actually get a very nice ring that I use for the rest of the game. It's just that good.
Yeah, because you can't take it off.
Yep.
I forgot about
Can't
that
remove
part.
it.
I'm not taking it off anyway. This is like the best ring in the game. It's like, I played the remake of 1, which apparently fixed a lot of the issues people had with it.
Oh, it was the original release was abysmal in some areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Whitedown in particular was one of the worst spots.
When I played it,
frame rate worked.
Yeah, when I was on the when I played it on the PS3 way back in the day, when you hit Blighttown, frame rate tanks to single digits a lot of the time.
Yep.
That's what I heard too, but I can happily say that I had no problem on Switch, so that's good. Dark Souls 2, I didn't really like that much. I felt the enemy design was very lacking. I felt like they did a lot of like, here's 50 enemies, here's a narrow corridor, have fun. And I'm like, it never is fun. And they did that god-awful thing where every time you die, your max health drops a little bit. I'm like, yeah, gee, thanks. I was struggling with this enemy before, now I gotta struggle with it harder. I didn't like to.
A lot of people don't like to. There's some that are very dedicated to it, and it really it does have its good points, but that game unfortunately has a troubled history behind its production. And part of the also is that Miyazaki was not available to be one of the main programmers / overseers for that particular title because he was busy with Artorias of the Abyss DLC for Dark Souls 1 and was busy with Bloodborne at the time. So he was just more of a background supervisor, just making sure that, kind of looking over shoulders and not trying to stifle creativity for that one. Led to some problems.
Yeah, I mean, it had its moments, but I was more frustrated with it than anything, especially the other 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I've had scenes where it's like, oh, you're going to have a hard time with this boss. It's hard. I'm like, And I walk through it. I'm like, I beat it on my second try. I'm like, okay, that was easy.
Yeah. Well, that just happens with any of these games because you could have a boss that everyone's like, oh my god, this is so hard. You can beat on like the first try and be like, is that it?
Yeah, because like, right, that's exactly what happened to be in 3 with Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Everyone's like, oh, this is like the hardest boss in gaming history. And I'm like, I pulled into it, started streaming, and beat it in like 20 minutes. I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my stream.
Yeah, this is just one of those series where there's going to be points where you're going to hit either a wall or you're going to just kind of get through parts pretty easily. Like everybody has their points of the game where they're either going to be able to get through it not that bad, or they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this part of the game is such bullshit, blah blah blah. It's just part of the experience too, which is why I really enjoy these games as well.
Yeah, they're not as hard as people say, definitely. I wouldn't say it's the hardest thing since Monkey Ball. But, From Software doesn't know how to end a story, though. All 3 of them are just like, okay, we're done now. Here are the credits.
Yeah, but it's really, they're games that are more about the journey, and as Bururian was talking about, they're more about the lore and stuff. And that's actually something that I really enjoy about these games, because they don't try and shove a narrative down your throat or stop the action like every... few minutes or something like that. Like, it just lets you experience things at your own pace, which is so nice and so refreshing to see in like a big game like that. That's why I like and love the hell out of this series.
Just read the description for the spell. I'm like, all right, cool. And it's like, yeah, all that stuff is like there if you want to see it, and then like tucked away if you don't. It's very non-intrusive, and I like that about it. I also noticed something very interesting that made me smile a little bit. I recently beat Slave Knight Gale, and his soul, unlike most other characters, is a humanity from the first game. I'm like, wow, that's cute. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like these games are really good about visual storytelling as well. Even if you don't read the dialogue or the text or the lore stuff, like it's gonna visually paint you a picture of what's going on. And Bloodborne is also a game that does a really good job about that one too.
Yeah, I was thinking about trying Bloodborne next.
Yeah, that's honestly that's the first one that I played of the Blood Souls games, or what the hell do I always call it? I always called Soulsborne, of the Soulsborne titles, and that was a good place to start out with. And it's definitely one that I would recommend checking out if you're if you enjoyed Dark Souls as much as you did, because it's actually pretty close, like combat wise, to how 3 was. Just without the shield, you just have a gun that you use to parry attacks and stuff.
Oh, I'm not good at parrying.
Well, don't worry, Father Gascoigne will teach you, like he taught me, which took me like half a fucking day just to do. I almost quit the game because of it. You get the hang of it, though. It feels very satisfying. That's one of the biggest things, too, with these Dark Souls games, is that when you get the combat master and you find a combination of stuff that works for you, or you find, a setup that you really like it like just clicks like that. It's so satisfying, whether you play by yourself or whether you play with others.
I had a club, and I just smacked people with it, and they went flying, and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Dark Souls, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your tales of Dark Souls with us. Like you said, the story's not in your face, but if you want to go read some tales of lore, you could get some more tales of information here.
Okay, hold on real quick before you do your little transition, finish up your transition here. If anybody listening does actually want to learn more about the Souls games and the lore behind them, go to YouTube and look up Vadi Vidya. He does a really good series on all the games about the lore and different characters and things like that. It's a great place to check out if you're interested about more of the stuff that you might not know about the games, or you just want to like get a quick synopsis of a character or a location.
You want more information on the games that Jay talked about today, please.
Or if you want the other side of that coin, go check out Zilly the Witch. They do these awesome videos on behind the scenes stuff on the game itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of good Souls creators out there, and a lot of cool perspectives from different people too. So there's tons of stuff you can check out. You're going to probably find something that's going to be like, wow, that's really cool, or wow, I did not know about that. A lot of interesting.
If you'd like a cool perspective on a totally different game, though, we could listen right now to BlueStar talk about her second best gaming experience of the year. Take it away, BlueStar.
Oh boy. So this gaming experience is brought to you especially by Plattym, who tipped me off about this game being on sale on the Nintendo eShop for $15 last fall. So this is
it was a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was. This is Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. It's what a lot of people say is the best game in the series. I think if you'll look online, at least until Arise came out a little bit earlier this year, I think you'd see about half people say Vesperia is the best one, and the other half say Symphonia is the best one. So it's one that I've been wanting to play for a long time. And, public opinion in this case was totally right. This one easily jumped up to my second favorite in the series, right behind Grace's. Honestly, the best part about it was being able to enjoy it with my brother. That's the reason why I got into the Tales series in the first place, because I looked at the back of the box and it's like, oh, 1 to 4 players. That sounds great. So he did most of the hard work on this one. So when we play Tales games, usually we switch off who's sort of controlling the protagonist and running around in towns and things like that, and who's sort of playing backup, maybe either on a walkthrough or looking things up that we're confused about, or, just doing more basic support stuff. So my brother was playing as Yuri, the main character. I was playing mostly as Rita, who is a really cool character and also a really fun character to play because you just stand there and spam Fireball the entire time. I think I cast Fireball probably at least 10,000 times throughout the course of the whole game, which was a lot of time. He did most of the hard work for this one, but, even sitting out and watching for a couple of other things, I also really enjoy the story aspect of games, so, it's good for us. So we had a lot of fun. We actually also had some really funny moments. For example, very first thing that happened in the game is my brother died in the tutorial.
Oh no.
We were playing the game on hard mode, so that's why, and it wasn't like you die in the tutorial, sorry, you gotta start over. It was you can win the fight or die and you still progress. And then another thing that I remember very fondly, other than, going up to fight the last boss in bathing suits, because, that's what you do in a Tales game, we spent a full hour in battle with the post-game boss. It was such a chaotic fight. We could not see a thing. We didn't know what was going on. I was just spamming spells over and over. My brother's character died probably 50 times, which actually means that the tutorial probably did a pretty good job of preparing him for that. But by the time that was all over, we were just like, oh, thank goodness. But it's definitely a fond memory, even though, it's something, we spent an hour fighting that boss. My mom was like, it's time for dinner, and we're like, we're in the middle of a boss fight. And an hour later, we're still in the middle of the same boss fight. So yeah, honestly, I had a lot of fun with it. It sounds like, I guess with me saying we've spent an hour fighting a boss, Blue, that sounds horrible. Why would you actually like this game? I have weird tastes, okay?
Masochist.
So it kind of followed the older RPG models. It had a lot of missable, unmarked side quests. So this was one that I definitely used a walkthrough to go through just to not even for oh, well, if you walk up here, you'll get this chest and yada, yada, yada. No, I just really wanted to be okay, so now that I've finished this boss fight, I need to walk in and out of the town 3 times to trigger this event before I move on. Otherwise, I'll never be able to get it. That type of thing.
You know what? Did Tales games have some really good spoiler-free walkthroughs like that?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, the one that I had for Vesperia was pretty good. It had all of the side quests marked in boxes, so I'd really just scroll down to the next box and be like, okay, so we're gonna come to this point at some point, and then I need to tell my brother to go take a little detour this way. So yeah, definitely. If you look,
I don't know about the Tales series so much, but I know the Trails of games. I've used some really good spoiler-free walkthroughs like that. Hey, when you get to the next town, make sure you do this and this and this, and then continue on with the story. It doesn't, it doesn't tell you everything. There's sometimes it'll be stuff will happen, and then you can do this, and that stuff that'll happen will be 45 minutes, and I'm like, oh, cool, now I can go find that hidden side quest or something.
Yeah, so it honestly, they don't make Tales games like they used to anymore. So I also played Tales of Berseria, and I think I finished that very soon before we started playing Vesperia. And I loved a lot of things about Berseria, but the newer models, at least for like gameplay and crafting and collecting things, it just seems a lot more open-ended and random. I like games like Vesperia because you can actually get all of the things, and you can actually get like 100% in your monster book and your item book, and you can make every item if you want to. Honestly, I like going for all of those little things in games. That's one of those things that helps my brain make the happy chemicals. So being able to actually fully explore the game and knowing that, hey, it's attainable, like there is an end. It's not like endless grinding for different equipment with different skills that are completely random that I have to overcome. There's a set number of things to go through. So at least with Berseria and Zestiria, those are some of the complaints I have about the games, even though I did still enjoy them. I have not had the chance to play Arise yet. I've heard that it does a lot of things really well, and it was praised very much when it came out. Mostly the reason that I haven't been able to play it yet is because I've been busy. But I'm also a little bit grumpy that they took multiplayer out of it, because like I said, that was the whole reason that I got into the series. But it is on my list of things to play sooner rather than later. So maybe I'll, for my
8 years from now.
Yeah,
You'll be
2022.
talking about that game.
Yeah, that's all I got on Tales right now. I feel like I talk about Tales on these a lot, but that's okay.
That's okay. We
You're
all
the
have our
tail.
go-to series.
I was gonna say you're the Tails on the trails, and I'm gonna go into the game that made this podcast, Dragon Quest. So for
What?
my
We don't talk about
what?
Dragon Quest
I know. This is
Dragon
Sidequest.
Quest on my Dragon Quest podcast? No.
I know.
Freaking heathen.
I'm gonna cut down a little bit from what Jay did. Jay talked 3 Dark Souls games. I'm gonna cut it down to 2, because I did play a pair of games this year, Dragon Quest games, for the first time that go very well together. I played Dragon Quest Monsters 2, the 3DS remake, and pretty much right after that, I played the Joker 3 Professional. So both games I've had pretty much a lot of experience with. Dragon Quest Monsters 2 for the GBA, I played the hell out of 15 years ago. Had a link cable, bred the monsters across the link cable, filled the whole 312 DQ decks out. I had basically did everything in the game. Loved that game. Loved the key system that got you basically an infinite number of little worlds to go to, and loved that. Joker 3 I played about 3 or 4 years ago over the summer, and I've never really cared about professional. I've seen all the, Joker professional, why'd we get vanilla, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I get that argument now after playing Joker 3 professional. I usually do not replay games, with pretty much almost the exception of Dragon Quest games, and I really had a good time with Joker 3 professional. They both of these kind of came available for fans pretty close to the same time, April and May of this year. We've had Z6N4 on here a couple times on Slimetime Prime to talk about the first time we had him on, he talked Dragon Quest Monsters 1, he talked Joker 3, both of which he had led the fan translation group for and released. And then we had asked him at the time, what about Dragon Quest Monsters 2? And he's like, listen, man, I am stuck on that. There is a problem where we can't get the text boxes to flow. There's a text box and there may be 80 Japanese characters in it, but translating that into English is 150 characters, and we can't find the trigger that'll let me put that much text in there and let the text box scroll down. He called it a needle in the haystack, and for a good year, I contact him off and on, and he's like, nah. But I want to say it was someone from Cuba contacted him, and they got working on it, and he got a small team together, and they knocked it out and released it on April Fool's Day this year. And
Nice.
I remember I got the Discord notification from his Discord to everybody, and it was like around 6 o'clock in the evening. Like, hey, everybody, guess what? We're done. Here's the GitHub page, and da 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 da. Directions are all there, and I like really quickly DM'd him as like, dude, it's April Fool's. Is this for real? and within a half an hour, he's like, no, everybody, really, it's out. Like, sorry. And chatting with him back and forth, April Fool's was on a Thursday, and I only know this because after talking with him, he's like, listen, I think that was going to be, I don't know if Easter was that weekend or whatever, but he wanted to get it out on Thursday, so knowing people might get around to it Thursday night, Friday, and then have the weekend to play it. There was some sort of long weekend then. Maybe it was Easter weekend or something, but he's like, no. He goes, like, we very intentionally released it on a Thursday. Didn't realize, I'm so caught up in this, I didn't realize there's April 1st. So I spent Friday night, April 2nd, modifying my 3DS to be able to play the fan translation. It was a long process, took like 2.5 hours. But really, it wasn't difficult. There's lots of little steps and then a lot of waiting. Like, oh, hey, format your little card. Wait 30 minutes as that happened and whatever. But got that all done. Got my modified 3DS, and I was able to then play. And you can pick Kobe or Tara. There's not two games. The story is, you got a local prince there that's an idiot. He knocks out this little plug in the island nation's castle, and water starts coming up, and oh no, the island's gonna sink because he knocked the drain off. Very kind of like childish humor thing. And basically, Waribu, is it Waribu in this one?
Waribo.
Waribo?
Yep, Waribo.
He jumps in the hole and plugs the hole. Either way, the little fuzzy guy jumps in, plugs the hole. He's like, hey, I can't stay here forever, but can you go get something magical that'll plug the hole, stop the drain?
Yeah, Waribo's definitely a lot more characterized than Waribo was from the first game, because he was mainly just like, oh, hey, look, you're the hero, you're going to save us all. And then he makes some sort of
just
comment
brings
about
you
where
there,
he went to.
Yeah, no, you're talking to him the whole game. You're always warping back to him. You kind of warp to other lands through this door, use keys. There's key lands to go to. Pretty much like in a Dragon Quest game. You go there, you solve the problems. They're like, oh, hey, guess what? We've got a big gold ball. Ooh, that looks like that might plug the hole. You run back. Waribu hops out. You put the ball in. He's like, yay, it solved it. And then the ball goes flying off and, oh no, and he jumps back in. And that's the gameplay loop. You keep going to different worlds. It takes like 5 or 6 hours to go through each world, and, you're breeding and whatever. But there's a whole post game where the prince fucks something up again after you solve the whole problem and save the city. And then, the skies start turning black, and oh crap, what did the prince do this time? And you have a whole nother gameplay loop to go through. Although it's kind of set up at the beginning, because at the beginning, this like huge dragon monster comes and gives you an egg. And the way that Z6 translated it is it's a montner. They took monster and took the S and made it an N. And I know he had the reason for that, and I know he said it like how they translated it that way. Can't remember the whole story there, but you get to make your own monster basically, and it's got like 9 different kind of typical Dragon Quest body types, and you can add arms and legs and put wings on it or whatever. I went with kind of a big cat, kind of like the were-tiger, but it had some different features to it and different colors, and it starts off as like an F-class monster. I got somebody playing it right now that's like messaging me every couple days about it, and just today he messaged me and was like, hey, does this thing stay F class forever? I'm like, no, like when you get it up to plus 25 rank, it turns into a C, and if you get up to plus 50, it turns into an A. And post game, you can start turning everything into like any monster into an SS plus monster. And like you want to make a slime, kind of like in the old games, you want to make a slime and make it the most amazing thing ever. You actually can in this game. There are methods to go about doing that post game. It was pretty cool because like Dragon Quest monsters, you're always breeding monsters, always getting somebody new, but this one actually had a monster that you could keep with you the whole time, and its usefulness kind of came and went until you could get it ranked up, because it's a rank F, but by the end of the first island you're catching rank D and maybe a bred a C monster anyway, and it's surely not keeping up with those. There was ways to get multiples of monsters. Once you caught, I think, 10 of each rank, like if you had 10 bee monsters, you would go to the library and there was a bee book and you'd get a bee key, and you take the bee key to the magic door, you open it, and you were kind of in a procedurally generated area that you could catch, randomly who would be there. You would see all the type rank B monsters that you've seen before. So, if you needed 3 king slimes to breed together and you only had one, it wasn't easy to go catch them, but there was a place that you knew that you could go get tons of king slimes, multiples of stuff. Love the post game. At the end of the post game, you start fighting dark versions of the main bosses for Dragon Quest 1 through 4. There's like a Dark Dragon Lord, but Azure Zoma, what is it? What was that? Shido Malroth.
Yeah, so like the names of them, just going off the old Game Boy Color.
I know the old game. Yep.
It was Lord Drago, which is for Dragon Lord. There was Genocido for Poseidon, which is what his name was back in the day. There was Azure Zoma, and then there was Psycho Piz, which was Psycho Pizarro.
Yeah, so the gameplay loop of the you have to go through a whole nother kind of continent and at a big dungeon. You get up to the top, and then there's some gameplay loop up there with the big dragon that you saw at the beginning, and you have to fight them. And at the end, you fight the Dark Dream final boss. That was pretty cool. And then there was another one after that, and I played for quite a while. I one of my best memories was I got my son hooked on this, and he'd only really played a long RPG once. He played Sword and Shield, Pokemon, but I modified his 3DS and got this on there, and he just, he's always liked Dragon Quest with all this stuff, and he actually played all the way through and went all the way through post game. I mean, he put, I think, 100 hours into it. Even more than me. And there were times where I woke up one morning and just spent 2 hours grinding out mini medals because I knew I was close to getting 100, and at 100 I would get one of those gold gem slimes that I was able to trade for him. He loved it. And then 2 days later he bred it into something else. I was like, seriously, come on. But I'll try to make the Joker 3 Professional. It's got all the breeding stuff like the other games. This was something a little bit weird because we had Z6N4 on over the summer, and I asked him about it because I was like, hey, Joker 3 Professional, the fan translation that's out there, the guy claims, he's like, oh, I found all the translation for the professional stuff just sitting around on the internet, and guess they didn't want to finish it, so I finished it. And Z6N4 did say, he's like, yeah, and he looked into it. He's like, this is our work. This is my team's work. We got to a point with that game that we weren't going to put in the effort to finish it. They do a really good job with translating graphics and getting a lot of graphics works and everything. And if you play Joker 3 Professional, it doesn't look as beautiful as Z6N4's Joker 3 Vanilla. There's a lot of little graphics and stuff untranslated, but the text is everything Z6N4 did. And then whoever this guy is, and there's a link on the Den with the whole thread, we'll put in the show notes, but he kind of took all that work that had been done, finished off the last 24 or 25 lines, and got it out there. And Z6N4 was a little ticked. The guy didn't give much credit, but he's like, listen, man, I wasn't going to finish this. I'm not going to put in the time and effort and all the play testing that I usually do for the game. So, I'm glad it's out there for the fans. Wish the guy would have credited me a little bit more in my team because we did all this work on it. And, just to say. And then the guy disappeared from the Den, never heard from him again. But it's out there and you can play it. It's really cool. The pro story at the end really wraps up like Joker 1 and 2. Basically every NPC and everybody's back from Joker 1 and 2 just kind of crammed at the end of Joker 3. There was a lot of fun stuff. I loved playing around with the changing colors. I didn't do that in the Joker 3 Vanilla. I know it was there, but I played around with it. I got a beautiful purple Emperor slime. That was my crowning achievement. This one had a better method maybe a better method for getting repeats of monsters, because and both these games you can get online and do online tournaments, which are still going on. But there's 200 people in Japan playing this game maybe every week. So you just get online and win a battle and you're top 200 and you're getting prizes for it. And in Joker 3, you would get different coins, like gold coins and silver coins that you could use in the online shop, and you could buy any monster that you've already had. So I went through the whole process of getting Emperor slimes to get the Emperor slime. And then I could just go and buy 5 more of them. So it was really easy to make really high level stuff as long as you could grind up to, certain parts. In Joker 3, you could ride on monsters, and there used to be different monsters that you could only ride on land, on water, and fly in the sky. In Joker 3, they made it so, or the professional, any monster can swim, any monster can fly, any monster can jump up and down. You've got this little, I know there's a name for him, Nachero or whatever. There's a little guy, it almost looks like one of those beaked monsters with the 2 legs and just a head that follows you around. And in this game, he could ride on monsters, you could ride on a monster, he could ride on a monster. If you go into battle together, you can fuse your monsters together that you're riding, and it would create a bigger slot version of the one that your main character was on. So I used to go into a lot of battles towards the whole post game. I'd have my Platinum King Jewel Slime I'd be riding. I'd have my little sidekick riding on an Emperor Slime. I'd go into a battle and their stats add up together. And suddenly I'd have this 4-slot Platinum King Jewel Slime that would just hardly ever get hit and just knock the shit out of people. It was fun. Just tank the end of the game like that. Although I never did completely finish it. The last boss has just flattened me a dozen times. And the last freaking final dungeon in the game is just a freaking maze that I've probably spent 4 hours to get through. And I got to save right at the end of it in front of the boss. And I've tried. I'm at this point, I'm okay, I've put in 60, 70 hours and I really don't want to go through all the breeding to get uber skills and uber this and uber that to do what I need to do to beat the final boss. But
yeah, it's weird that these Joker games always seem to do some sort of maze as one of their final dungeons, because I remember Joker 2 did that exact same thing, that there was a maze dungeon towards the end of the game, and it was just why is this here? This seems really out of place.
Yeah, this one was weird, and it had electrical fences that if you touch the fence you got warped back to the beginning. So it's oh my god, first of all, if I can't find my way through the maze and then I just touch this and I'm at the beginning again. It's a warp maze. That's like a Shin Megami Tensei warp maze sort of shenanigans. It's ridiculous. It was rough, but I mean, honestly, absolutely loved it. Joker 3 Pro, it was worth playing again. And it was really cool. And Dragon Quest Monsters 2, the remake, that was awesome as well. So I put in a good 140 hours with those games and back to back, and just had a really good time with Dragon Quest for 3 months. Games I hadn't had before. So new Dragon Quest. I think it was that 25th anniversary or 35th anniversary that kicked it off. So, all right, talk about kicking things off. We're going to kick off our best games of the year. And I've already forgot the order. Wow, Bururian. We're going to go with your number 1.
Oh, boy.
It's a big one. It's one that came out this year.
This one actually came out this year. The other 2 were in 2016, and I just was lazy and finally got around to them this year. But this one I played, well, not the day it came out, because I actually couldn't find any copies for it anywhere the day it came out. And I went to 7 to 10 different stores trying to find a copy, and just nobody had a copy. And that was Metroid Dread for the Switch.
Were you dreadfully excited to play it?
I was dreadfully excited to play it and dreadfully sad when I couldn't find a copy on the day that it came out.
That's dreadfully awful, I'm sorry.
I know. But the next day I was able to find a copy. I woke up and, the store nearest me had a copy, so I went and I picked it up. This one is one that was, almost 20 years in the making, because the last Metroid game we got was 2004, which was Fusion. So I've been waiting for this for a long, long time. This came out when I was Fusion came out when I was just going into college, and now here, all these decades later, we finally get the sequel, and apparently the kind of closing of the book on this chapter of the Metroid saga, as the developers, I think, said, pretty much. But, gosh, what is there to say about it? Metroid good. Play Metroid. It's
Metroid good. Play Metroid.
Metroid good. So
now on to Jay's number 1 game of the year.
That's it?
The brain strikes.
No, it's not really it.
But
you never be silly, people.
The developers for this game, it was co-developed with Nintendo. Mercury Steam were the people that did this game, and they really outdid themselves on this game. They did the previous remake of Metroid 2 on the 3DS, and I was okay with that one. I wasn't too thrilled by it, to be honest. I thought it was just okay. And when I heard that they were also doing this one, I was like kind of cautiously optimistic about it, because I was always just kind of annoyed that Metroid, since the second game, well, except Super Metroid, they've all been on handhelds. Like even the remake of Metroid 1, which was Zero Mission. So one of my favorite Nintendo franchises has just been relegated to handhelds, and people get excited for them in the moment, but hey, new Zelda game out, so everybody forgets about Metroid. But that's my diatribe on that. The game itself is great. It starts out really, really strong, of you basically getting baited into visiting a planet, because at the end of Fusion, the X-parasites are still kind of they should be extinct. And at the beginning of the game, someone sends in a video of, there's one on this planet, we should go down and check it out. And immediately Samus gets attacked by somebody, and per Metroid fashion, she loses all of her abilities, and she has to work her way through the map to get them all back, and maybe even get some new abilities along the way. The whole Emmy structure of the game, the whole kind of dread, which is why it was called Metroid Dread. They were sent in to deal with the X parasites, and they are not heard of long after getting onto the surface of the planet. So you, as the bounty hunter and who has dealt with the X parasite and who is immune to the X parasite, go down to the planet to find out just what is going on. And throughout most of the game, talking to your computer, Adam, you kind of get just a rundown on everything that's been going on as you've been working your way through the game. It's really hard to talk about the game, because you can't really talk about it without spoiling stuff as things goes along. If you've played a Metroid game before, you've played this one. You get new areas, you get new power-ups, to use those power-ups to go to new areas. I do like that they improved the melee system from the 3DS version. Playing this game on a big TV with an actual controller instead of using a small, crampy 3DS controller is great. Any game not on handheld is the game for me. When you put it on a small screen and small controls, I don't have tiny hands, so it's nice when you can use like a pro controller to play these games. The initial time it took me about 15 hours to get through, but I enjoyed the game so much that I turned around and beat it again like the next day. So I took it from doing a 15-hour clear, and my second clear I got it in like 3 hours and 20 minutes, which is
nice.
Pretty fast. Yeah. It was. I had the critical path memorized, so I just booked through it again.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And you get different rewards on your save file for completing it in certain times with item percentages up. So if you get 100% items and you complete it in under however many hours, I think it was under 4 hours or under 6 hours, you get a bunch of extra unlockables for the gallery and stuff like that. But
so
yeah.
You didn't buy the amiibos, did you?
I still have not been able to find the amiibos.
But were you able to get 100% without the amiibos?
Yeah. So all the amiibos do is they give you one extra missile tank and one extra energy tank that don't count towards completion.
Okay, thank God. Because everybody was worried about that one and be like, oh, they locked that behind that. So it's good to hear that is not the case. Because everybody was afraid about that. I know that for sure.
So, yeah, I found out about that when I was reading their website. And, if you use any of the other Metroid amiibos, like I've got the ones from the 3DS game of the Metroid and the non-Smash Samus, and those will heal you, or one of them will heal you completely once every 24 hours, and the other one will completely fill your missiles up once every 24 hours. Some of the random amiibos work with it as well, but if you've got other Metroid amiibos, they will work. But they don't unlock anything. They just recharge that one time, which is helpful if you're having problems with certain bosses. Mercury Steam really outdid themselves. I enjoyed a lot of the boss battles. I do know that a lot of people had kind of a criticism about how some of the bosses all the bosses require melee counters to eventually defeat. Because if you don't, it can take even longer, because basically the melee encounter is kind of shortcut the boss health down a little bit more. But yeah, also it's one of those things of talking about the bosses just kind of spoils the game. So Metroid good, play Metroid.
I'm glad you made that joke again. I was hoping you would. Metroid good.
Metroid good.
Well,
Suit design was also really good.
Yeah. So, real quick question about that: does she get that suit like after the events of the beginning of the game, or is it one that she starts off with?
What do you mean
with
the one?
with the white and the blue suit that they show in the
that's
stuff?
That's what you start with.
That's what you start with. Okay.
Yeah, after you're on the planet and all of your abilities get revoked, basically you start with that because you got the cutscene and that happens to her and she gets up and she looks at her suit and you're just like, oh, all right, let's go kill shit.
Okay, gotcha.
Blue Dabadee, now you die.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on from Metroid to another quite famous game series here. We start. MattCraft mentioned it back in his number 2 game, the Final Fantasy series. But Jay, what was your Final Fantasy that you thought the world of this year?
Yes, that was World of Final Fantasy, specifically the Maxima version, because all of my games have to have suffixes.
Honestly, I don't feel like you can really play that game without playing that version at this point.
Yeah. I got it on Switch. It was on sale. I think it was like $15. I'm like, sweet. And so it is kind of more like Dragon Quest Monsters than Final Fantasy. You have your 2 main characters, Lan and Rain, I believe their names are, and they have the power to imprison with an M monsters and turn them into allies. So once you find out that time has stopped flowing in your world, you use those powers to try and figure out what's going on and how to get everything back to what it's supposed to be doing. You have a whole bunch of monsters from all different Final Fantasy games that you can befriend and level up, and as they do, they get skill points, which you could put into a sphere grid looking thing. As you go along, you can usually unlock like variations of certain monsters, like you can have a yellow chocobo, a black chocobo, and a white chocobo, and you can switch between them freely, and they all have their own sphere grids. It's very nice. I loved the plot of it because it's like if Kingdom Hearts didn't take itself seriously. It's very jokey, a lot of physical humor. I have this one clip of you spend most of your traveling on a train that's run by this little Kakor conductor, and there's this scene where you're in like this graveyard and he has a train all dressed up to be like spooky, and he sneaks up behind Rain and shouts at her. She flips out, tries to punch him, and he just like zips back and forth, and it like jump cuts to her trying to hit him again, and zips again, and he's like, you do that a couple of times. It's like watching a cartoon, and pretty much the whole game is like that. Yes, there's a picture of it. Thank you, Platy. That is your background, isn't it?
No. That'd be. I load the game up. That's not the background.
Oh, okay. That's just like the splash screen, I guess.
Yeah.
So I liked. You can have monsters in 3 different sizes: small, medium, and large, and you create 2 groups of 3 consisting of the 2 heroes and then either a small and a large monster. You stack them all up, a large on the bottom, a medium in the middle, and a small on top. And the main heroes can each play as a large or a medium character. And I went through most of my game with Ifrit because he gets remarkably strong at the end of the game and absorbs fire and has auto float. So a lot of these enemies that use fire or earth attacks, your entire stack is just completely immune to it because your resistances are all pooled together. I'm not really sure how to write reviews. I don't know why you keep bringing me all this stuff.
It's not really a review, it's just you giving your opinion.
Yeah.
Here's my opinion. Final Fantasy good.
So does it play more like one of the older games or like the newer games?
It's
the battle system wise.
It's ATB-ish.
There we go.
No, let him finish. It's not as ATB as it sounds.
You can make it wait. I played on wait.
Basically, Platy, it's like when the bar loads on the side for your character.
Yeah,
it's their turn. Like
you also have action points.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light, if you guys played that one. Or I guess kind of like Bravely Default, not really.
Platy, you know how Grandia works where you have the bar that shows you, and then when it gets full for the character, then it pauses, and then they can take their action. It's like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like Grandia gameplay, so you'd probably like it.
That's how ATV went. But like you have like these action points and like Fire costs 3 action points, Fyra costs 5, and Fyriga costs like 8 or something like that. And every time your turn comes up, you get a couple of action points that you can use or not and save up for something big. Stacking up certain units with the same skills gets you enhanced versions. Like if you have 2 characters that have fire, you get Fyra, and if you have 2 characters with Fyra, you get Fyriga. Or you can make some weird combinations like Fyriga, Thundaga, and Blizzaga and get Ultima, and that's fun.
Oh, geez, that you know what, that you mentioned it earlier. That makes me think of the way that all the remakes and the DS and 3DS skills work on, or the skill sets work on Dragon Quest Monsters.
Yeah,
like to get the uber abilities, you know,
certain skills to get weird stuff or stuff that you're not supposed to have yet. And like I made this joke because I was fighting this boss and it used like Fyraja, like a tier 4 spell, and I had a team of Ifrit and Ruby Dragon, and both of those are healed by fire. And I'm like, oh no, Fyraja, whatever am I gonna do? And because how resistances like pool together for your whole team, even if you have someone who's weak to fire, you can have it basically gets like canceled out, so it's just regular immunity instead of absorption. And like there's like you have this like super powerful attack that's supposed to be like a major threat. They even warn you about it ahead of time, and it's like, oh, so that's not even a problem anymore, is it?
Interesting. I've never really heard anybody talk about it. I mean, I've like read a review or two here and there, and I know it's been out forever.
All the characters will pop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they never made merch for some reason.
They never what?
They never made merch for it for some reason.
Oh,
like such a wasted opportunity. I want to choke about.
It's weird. It's just one of those games that completely flew under the radar. It just and then you know, like a year or two later, they came out with that maximum version. And it's just like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like that's where you want to spend your resources. If you had the original version, you could upgrade it to maximum for like 5.
Like it was like, oh no, I remember seeing like 10 or 15.
Yeah, no, it wasn't
like,
that cheap.
Yeah. But yeah, ever since then, Square does not talk about that game in any capacity.
Nope.
Neither does almost anybody, it seems. Like I said, I'm the only person.
It's just you.
Oh well. I enjoyed it. It was my game of the year this year.
Yeah. And
it was fun. It was funny. It made me laugh a lot. Like the very
I do love games that don't take themselves seriously.
The very first scene, Lon's like working at this cafe, and this girl comes in and he's like, hey, can I have some sugar? He brings over like a jar of sugar cubes and like watches in agony as she keeps putting in more and more and more cubes. And it's like, as someone who's worked in retail, you know how that feels. How you have to have like that fake smile plastered on as you watch someone do something completely ridiculous, like put an entire jar of sugar cubes in their coffee.
All right, well, you've made your case for your favorite game of the year. It's time for our last guest to make their case for their best game that they played this year. Or should I say games? BlueStar.
Objection! Oh, no, wait. I am BlueStar. Sorry. It is late, and I am very tired. But my...
That was her objection to going last.
So, my number one game for the year is actually The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, which is a game that came out in 2021, which is surprising for me. It's
a visual novel, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, visual novel seems to be my theme this year.
In Blue's words, visual novel good.
Yeah, visual novel good. This is actually my first experience with the Ace Attorney series in general. And I have to say, I was quite pleasantly surprised. It was actually something that, my mom back in, August was asking, hey, what kinds of things do you want to, like, what do I get your brother for his birthday? And I was like, okay, he's been talking about this Ace Attorney game that's coming out, so you should get that for him. And then he comes home right before his birthday, and we mentioned it, and he's like, yeah, I didn't really like I've been watching a streamer play it, so I didn't really think I needed to play it by myself. And my mom shoots me a look like, you told me he wanted this game, and I'm like, I'm sorry. But he ended up really being excited that he got the game, and he was like, Blue, you need to play this, because I sort of know how the puzzles work for the first couple sections, because I haven't seen the whole thing yet. So I ended up playing it, and when he went back to school, I then actually streamed it to him. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was kind of a period setting, which I enjoy a lot, like 1900 England. One of the characters is actually named Herlock Sholmes. Not Sherlock Holmes, Herlock Sholmes.
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
What are you talking about? That's not Sherlock.
No, definitely not. He's a consulting detective, but and he wears a deerstalker hat. But he's a complete moron, so it totally is not that character.
Do not sue us.
But honestly, the character interactions in the game are absolutely phenomenal. The story across the two, because Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is a sort of collection of Great Ace Attorney adventures and Great Ace Attorney Resolve. So it's a duology, and it is a complete story in itself. And traveling across it with the characters and seeing how they develop across everything was a lot of fun. What I did find out about Ace Attorney is that there's a couple times where you as the player very conceivably can figure out more things than the game wants you to at that point. So like I'd be like, okay, so this is what happened, so I should present this piece of evidence on this line. And it would be like, no, the game doesn't want you to make that conclusion yet. First, you got to establish this other thing. And it's like,
Oh, that's dumb.
But it's right there. But so
That's
there,
stupid.
there are a couple where you kind of have to take a step back and like, okay, all of these people in the judiciary system are dumbasses. You got to walk them through it step by step. How do you go about doing that? But
That's dumb.
You can't present banana peel as evidence. You have to present the picture of the banana peel.
yes, more or less. Because the important thing is the fact that this banana peel was laid out in this specific orientation in this photograph.
You better bring the monkey in that also ate that banana too, so you can show him how he peeled the banana to get the banana peel down there.
Yep, absolutely.
But you at the specific time, otherwise it doesn't count. Try again.
That's not the right monkey.
I want to say like 90% of the time it was like really clever, really like nuanced. Like you're like, okay, what the heck do I do with all of this? And you're just like flipping through all of the evidence that you have, and something catches your eye, and you're like, oh, that doesn't add up with what this person said at all. But then there are a couple that are pretty obscure that just sort of leaves you presenting random things, and the judge calls you an idiot and takes away one of your lives type of thing. But lives don't really matter in that game. If you lose all your lives, you essentially just restart from the last autosave, which is usually like 30 seconds of gameplay back if you like have already read all the testimony and things like that. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I know Glaceon Mage on the Den, this is one of their favorite games of all time, so I know they would very much recommend it as well. So it was a lot of fun. I don't know if I will then go to play the main Ace Attorney games after that, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
A lot of those to Switch at this point, haven't they?
Yeah, it's all in one collection.
I have no idea, actually.
It's all in one collection. Yeah, it's pretty much on every console at this point.
3 is on everything at this point.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
In like a collection.
I wonder if my brother will be like, hey, we should do more Ace Attorney stuff.
Well, Blue, if your brother is potentially not necessarily interested in Ace Attorney, you could trick him with the Professor Layton crossover.
Oh, he's familiar with the Professor Layton crossover.
I love it. It's going to make my list.
It's like the weirdest thing I've ever heard of, but
it totally makes sense though, considering what both of them do. But yeah, it's really weird. It seems like there's, well, for one, different art styles entirely, and it seems like they're in different time periods. But anyway,
didn't stop Kingdom Hearts.
Well, that's because Kingdom Hearts doesn't give a shit.
Well, you got Blue telling you that the Great Ace Attorney took place in the 1900s in England, so apparently these can take place anywhere.
Yep. Well, it's because it's a prequel to the.
Yeah,
it's a prequel to the other Ace Attorney games, like it's his ancestor.
Yeah.
Yep, the Great Ace Attorney is not Phoenix Wright.
No.
It's Sherlock Holmes.
No, it's not.
No, it's his
Sherlock-
ancestor.
I know. I was just making a joke. 'Cause I know I
Sherlock
get
Holmes is brilliant though.
It's Mace Materney.
Sherlock Holmes and his assistant Watson.
Wilson,
Sure.
actually.
What?
Wilson.
What?
Is it a
Is
beach
that-
volleyball?
I was gonna. You made the joke before I could.
I'm glad we both thought the same thing.
Yep, I was gonna say, is he kind of roundish? Got a weird pattern on his face? Doesn't say
Just
much.
a man keeps running around with him going, Wilson, what are we gonna do? I'm sorry.
It actually might be a 10-year-old girl, but
Oh no.
It's a little deflating.
You know, I always thought that movie was missing that element to it. Oh wow, she's really tired. She thought that was super funny.
Wow,
But it was Yangus. I'm funny. I keep trying to tell you that.
Yeah, funny looking. Yeah.
Gotta give you another picture of edible underwear.
what?
That's just interpretive art. That's all it was.
I thought that was a necklace.
It was definitely not a necklace, and I said it wasn't a necklace. I specifically
I don't know
said
what-
that.
Serious?
Yangus and I were texting back afterwards. I'm like, you gotta
I
realize.
almost made a joke about it how it being underwear related, and then sure enough, when Platy told me elsewhere that that's what it was, it's like, oh shit, the joke would have worked.
Yep, it would have.
Man, I just got
You were spot on, man.
Like, damn, I should have gone with my instincts.
If you would
Should've
like to know
used
what
that.
we're talking about, maybe you should join Bururian's official unofficial Dragon's Den Discord, the link to which is in our show notes.
Yes.
Oh no, I know what you guys are talking about now.
Yep. That's why you were laughing so hard for a little bit ago. You were just like, candy necklaces that aren't necklaces.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's okay. You don't
It's
have to
in
worry
your
about it,
own
sweetheart. Go down to
Discord.
sleep.
We're bad admins.
Badman.
Badmins.
We both.
Welcome to the
Oh.
part of the show that is just incoherent blabbering because we are all exhausted.
Yeah, we are rounded in on midnight here, so I will get to my number one game, and then we'll call it to a close. Blue, if you do need to go, feel free. Have a good night.
I can add some laughter for flavor probably for this last section.
All right, since this game's one that I can't really talk much about the story because we're suddenly 5 games deep into the Trails of series here. What's
Didn't
funny
you
is
just talk about this game on the last episode of Sidequest we did.
Does it have is Estelle in it?
she is in it. She does make an appearance. I don't think
Oh.
that's much of a spoiler because, gosh, in these games, they're cumulative. By the time
Yeah.
you get Cold Steel 3 and 4, you've got, 30, 40 characters that you can do. My number one game last year was Trails from Zero, the Zero no Kiseki, the first of the 2 Crossbell games. And my number one game this year is the second one, the second Crossbell game. And you guys are talking about games that were released in the past. I'm talking about one that's yet to come, at least to America. So this is the second of the Crossbell games in the Kiseki series. There's 3 Trails in the Sky games, 2 Crossbell, 4 Trails of Cold Steel, and there's more going on beyond that. But these games came out for the PSP, and then there were Vita remakes earlier in the decade, or middle of last decade, should I say. These games never came over. Trails in the Sky came over, Trails of Cold Steel came over. The Crossbell games did not. The first Crossbell game, though, is coming out in 2022. Followed by the next Crossbell game in apparently early 2023. So you've still got a year or so to do it. Last year, I had played Trails in the Sky 3 in November, played through 0 at Christmas, all the way through Christmas, talked about it at the end of the year show, and then I went straight into this game, put about 24 hours into it last January, and was like, man, I've just done about 150 hours of Trails in a row. I need to pause. And luckily, 24 hours in, there was a lovely chapter called Intermission. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, you were knocking these games out left and right last
I
year.
really was last year, yeah. And then it was like, whoa. And I'd even beat Trails in the Sky 2 earlier in the year, so probably 200 hours of Trails, in 6 months. And, right now I'm burnt out on Dragon Quest just for all that Dragon Quest monsters this summer. Yeah, I was burnt out on Trails for a while. Okay, I got to set it aside. So, set it aside in January and picked it back up right before Thanksgiving. And holy cow, I blew through 40 hours of gameplay in 10 days. Again, I've talked about this before. Loved the combat in all the Trails of games. It reminds me so much of Grandia, with everybody. It's actually got like the Final Fantasy X. You see everybody's turn order, but when you go to cast a spell or something, or it takes time. And when the monsters are casting spells, it takes time, and you can knock into them and cancel their spell casting. Everything's got area of effects. You've got cones, you've got circles, you've got straight lines. So just like the Grandia games, there's all that. Like your position here, you're on a grid. I was playing the PSP version fan translation of it, and it pretty much is Trails in the Sky combat. It's interesting, and I was talking to Yangus about it as I got into the first game last year, and then even more into the second game here. And I've been playing Cold Steel 2 for the past week, and man, you play these games in order, and you can follow the evolution of the battle system. Like they put this break system into the second Crossbell game, where it starts off in boss fights or in certain areas. You can fill up a break meter, and if the break meter fills up, you can use it. All of a sudden, the background just disappears. It looks like you're fighting them in outer space, but you just get your turns, boom, 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 right in order. And if you cast a spell, it happens instantly. So if you've got like 4 or 5 people lined up, like you can just like really wail on them with some high level spells, hit them, heal yourself. Just you take a break from the battle and just can do a bunch of stuff in order. And then playing Cold Steel 2, that's something you can do also. Like it only does like 3 turns in a row, but like you can see, that led right into what they did in the Cold Steel games and whatnot. So there are a lot of, I don't want to really say anything from the plot too much. It follows right after the first Crossbell game. It takes place in the big town of Crossbell. Crossbell is between the Calvard Empire, which is where the Trails of series is going next, and the Empire of Erebonia, which is where all the Cold Steel games are set. And these 2 games take place during the events of Cold Steel 1 and 2. And it's interesting because it spoils a lot of plot points for Cold Steel 1 and 2, which, I mean, whatever, it came out years before them. So it told all these things like, oh man, did you hear in Erebonia, blah, 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 blah. And then later in the game, you hear the twist like, oh, guess what? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't know that. I've only played Cold Steel 1. Holy crap. Now I know what's going to take place in Cold Steel 2. At least one of the major beats. But at the same time, things happen in Crossbell. There's the West Zemuria Trade Conference that is talked about quite a bit in Cold Steel 1, and you get to play.
Oh yeah, they talk about that quite a bit. I remember that.
Oh yeah, it's, oh my gosh, what was going on there, and then this, and da 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 da. Things going down. Yep, I played through the trade conference in January, and it was, once that all settled down, that was like the intermission chapter, so I was like, oh, perfect. Ooh, that was an intense couple hours of gameplay there, and something that I recognized from years ago in Cold Steel 1.
Oh man, I'm curious then if some of the characters showed up then, but that's something for another time to talk about on here.
And what happens to the Guerrilla Fortress in Cold Steel 1?
Yeah.
You start Cold Steel 1 in the Guerrilla Fortress, don't you? Like,
yeah, it's like a flash forward of what
the opening game. Yep. So that's covered there. And I will say the second Crossbell game, it's excellent. I love that it focuses on one town, one area. And you've been playing 2 games here. I've spent like 125 hours in this one city, but it never really gets old. It's familiar. You're going to, there's a new dungeon every now and then. You're going all over. They give you a fast travel option, way better in this game. The first game, you're taking a bus everywhere. In this game, they give you a car. So you're able to travel a little bit to certain locations a little bit more, basically like a zoom function. And it's familiar. You know the places you're going to, but things are always happening. Things are always changing. The city's threatened because, I mean, why not? They're always getting threatened. There's got to be some threat in the game, and it's not, God's coming to kill everybody. Oh my gosh. But there's a lot of mystical stuff because in these games, everybody's using weird ancient arts and whatnot. But it was really cool, and it ends on a pretty sad note. Like, you're like, oh damn, like crap. I can't imagine but I've already played Cold Steel 1, Cold Steel 2. You kind of know, if you've followed it all, I don't know plot points, but just by seeing box art for Cold Steel 3 and 4, you kind of know what's going on there. a little bit at least. But this ends on a really kind of, it's not a cliffhanger. It wraps up the stories in Crossbell, but because there's so many more games taking place on this continent, so many more games taking place in the bigger world of it, there's a lot more story. And this one kind of ends at the end of it. You just kind of get a bunch of scenes and, like the postscript, like, at the end, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did. And you're like, holy crap, that's not good. Months after, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, geez. So I'm very interested to see what's going to go on with the rest, and I'll probably burn out again after Cold Steel 2 and have to put 3 and 4 off till like maybe next holiday season. But I've played 6 or 7 hours of Cold Steel 2 now, and even them talking like, hey, Guerrilla Fortress is over this way and blah 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 blah. Did you hear about what was going on in Crossbell? I'm like, actually, I did. I was there.
Yeah, because during those events, they talk about a lot of stuff that was going on in Crossbell. In Cold Steel 1 specifically. So that's interesting then that Crossbell does the inverse, and does a lot of the like, oh, this is going on over there in Erebonia right now, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we're currently, about a year ago, I had a huge article on RP Gamer, and it's still there, like, hey, Dragon Quest series, where to start? And we covered, I wrote like 85% of it, but it wrote about like 42 different Dragon Quest games. Like, if you like board games, try out the Itadaki Street games. If you like Pokemon, maybe the Dragon Quest Monsters games are for you. And just kind of hit like every sub-series and just gave a couple paragraphs. Well, we're doing that with all the Legend of Heroes games, even going back to the NES ones. And I just finished writing. I wrote a 5-paragraph essay about the Crossbell games, and my last paragraph is like, do not start with these games. I feel like plot points, because honestly, if you play Cold Steel 1 and 2, it ruins some plot points from the Crossbell games. And if you play the Crossbell, it ruins plot points from the Cold Steel. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, though. But since these games aren't out, like, officially, you were able to, for a while, play the Geofront translations. The fan group got permission and was able, you could buy the games through Chinese servers, apply the patch officially. But Falcom paid them off. Falcom bought their translation, and that is the translation that, Exceed will be putting into the Switch version of these games.
Oh, wow.
NIS America.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was wondering if they'd use that translation or not.
Yep, they did. So you can't get the Geofront translations anymore. Part of the deal was pull down your freely. But I mean, they've been out there. So
yeah, that's awesome though. They'd be able to support, and I kind of like it when I've heard of other stories like that, where like if a translation group does something and a company's planning to release the game, that they'll be like, "Hey, we want to use your translation because it's so good."
Yeah, and I know Geofront had spent a lot of time getting names right and whatever. When I played the Zero no Kiseki last year, it was not a Geofront translation. It was something earlier. And I mean, it was fine. I mean, there's the player names like Estelle's in there and Joshua from the Sky Games make little appearances and whatever. And I mean, the big stuff's in there. There was like maybe a spell that was something different that was not exactly the way it was in the Sky Games. But I mean, the Sky Games are out here in English, so whoever fan translated that one is pretty good. And the second one, I think, is an early leak of the Geofront translation that somebody then backported into the PSP version, and I thought it was really good. It was better than the first one. So I did play some fan translations of the old PSP titles. It was a little hard because I'd been playing the Vita versions of Sky 2 and Sky 3, and going back to PSP was a little rough, but, I played 120 some hours of them, so it didn't take too long before I was like, oh, here we go. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, oh, good, I'm back to a little bit more modern times with Cold Steel 2. But, I mean, I really like these games. They are JRPG as hell, but you're not fighting God. You're not... It's got a lot of power of friendship. Oh my God. Work hard and you can do it. If it doesn't say that 10 million times in the game.
Welcome to Japanese RPGs.
Yeah. Well, it's all about presentation. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. That's what makes these games a little more tolerable than, say, another series we were talking about earlier. It doesn't really make it like the focal front point. It actually makes these characters... Never mind, I'm not going to keep going on because I'm just going to rambling at that point. Basically, it's like not the presentation style of how Trails does that kind of shit. It doesn't make it like, oh my God, this is going to make me bash my head in with a hammer.
And I mean, the crossbow games are pretty cool because, I mean, the Sky games, you're bracers. You're just a bunch of do-good people walking around, solving people's problems all over the place. The crossbow games, you're part of the police. Like, you're part of the police force. You're the special support services, which is pretty funny because it's formed because the police have a bad reputation in the first game. And so they're like, we're going to form this little group and you're going to listen to requests in the city and do the requests. And, like, almost the whole game, you're getting ragged on by the police, like, you're basically bracers. And it's like, actually, you are. they just need an excuse to keep the gameplay loop exactly like the Sky games. But
yeah, it's weird, too, with this series because, like, what is it? Cold Steel actually addresses that, where a lot of people view bracers in the series as, like, a lowly job, or you know, it's not really that great at all, even though some people are like, oh, you know, being a bracer is really cool. Like, it's like looked down upon pretty badly in some of the games. And in some...
in Cold Steel, in the Erebonia, the country of Erebonia, they're pretty much ousted. They're not there. Yeah, there's a bracer... What's funny is there's a bracer guild in Crossbell, and you pair up with them quite a bit, but it's like, well, you're doing the same thing we are. And that gives the excuse for, you know, the cameos of Estelle and Joshua and some other characters, because, hey, they're bracers. Remember a couple of years ago when we met up and solved the problems in Liberal? You got any problems here? We'll come by every now and then. So, just an excellent game. That duology, it was a little over a year and a half ago. I think I put on our old Facebook group the turn-based one. I was like, okay, for those of you who played it, like I keep hearing like this. Everybody loves the Crossbell games. Like, what makes them better than Sky or better than Cold Steel? And I got a lot of nasty replies of just play it, you'll find out. Well, yeah. And honestly, like for me, why I like them better, and I don't know, I've only played a quarter of Cold Steel at this point. It's not like Trails in the Sky gets a lot of metaphysical stuff and huge ancient cultures and all this stuff. And Crossbell's like, you're solving the problems of a city. I visited that baker at the beginning of every chapter in both games and got some neat recipes from him for good bread that'll revive me and take away the burn status and whatever. I just know to stop by his place every 5 hours, and you know, you're solving little political problems in the city, like, oh, the mayor needs this, the councilman this, and it's not huge concepts. And it's done well. It's a good battle system. It's got good music. It's just really done well. You know, obviously, it set the stage for the Cold Steel games, and you know, Falcom's cranking them out now. We're getting the translations of everything. So obviously it's picked up. It's become popular enough that we're getting these things.
Bread is not a huge concept. Bread good.
Let me tell you, for the baker right next to your special support service area, it is not. The fact that he can come up with a new recipe every chapter of every game, you know.
Bread good.
Yeah.
Bread good. Bread good. Eat bread.
Good.
Tell me when he comes up with the banana nut duck bread recipe, and then I'll be there.
Duck bread?
Oh, it's a joke from a TV show.
Okay.
I thought you were quacking up there, Yangus.
Always quacking up.
You can't hit me with these obscure pop culture references at 12:13 a.m.
And since it is 12:13 a.m., I think that's about it for this episode of Slime Time Side Quest. Thank you to our dear departed MattCraft. He's not dead. He just left like 2.5 hours ago.
Gonna write his fucking eulogy here.
He's fine. I mean, just the part.
Just a flesh wound.
Just a flesh wound. Thanks, Jay, BlueStar, and Bururian for joining us to talk about your favorite games from 2021.
Metroid good.
Bread
good. Bread good. What's good to you, Jay? Final Fantasy good?
Final Fantasy good.
All right.
Mandrake. Mandrake good.
Mandrake good.
Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, guys. We'll see if we have any crossover favorites when Platy and I have a few more guests returning soon for a part. They'll be returning to the show for part 2 soon, and I will reveal my top 3 of the year on that episode as well.
Yeah, speaking of revealing things.
Platy, we've been here long enough. I mean, have you seen the length of your notes compared to MattCraft's? Please don't repeat that joke from last year. Just move it along.
Yeah. Right. Okay, shorten this up. Patreon is the root of all evil and sin in the world. Woodus, good. Go to Dragon Den. Dragon Den, good. Buy your last-minute Christmas gifts. Christmas gift, good. Amazon affiliate link on the Den, good. You know, sex toys, good. You could probably buy them through the link.
What?
Or what?
I was
Or
hoping
underwear,
I was
or
really
whatever.
hoping you were going to
Nope.
say that for the sex toy.
Yep, nope. Click Woodus Amazon link. It could not cost you anything. Yangus, take it away.
If you have
Yangus,
suggestions, which are good, for a future Sidequest episode, which is also good, we'd be happy to hear from you. You can reach out to Platy via Twitter, Platy3, Twitter not good, or Discord, which is good, or the Dragon's Den. You can also contact me, YangustheLegendaryBandit, not good, on the Dragon's Den via personal message or the Dragon's Den Discord. We have a list full of ideas. Some good, some bad. We'll see what happens. Some not good. I don't know.
Most
and
okay.
We'll be happy. just okay. It's a few that's just fine. Yeah, whichever. But yeah, if you have any suggestions for an episode or a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. We'd be happy to add it to the list.
That's right. Good.
Good.
Bye, everyone.
Then good.
Side quest complete. Good.
Good.
Like, good.
Good.